For joining us tonight. I would like to start off with a moment of personal reflection, please. Thank you. Do you have the national anthem queued up?
I do.
Right.
I do.
I can pull it up, Madam Clerk, if you're having a hard time playing it. Madam Clerk, I have it ready here if you'd like me to play it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Councillor Hebert, if you don't mind playing it. Thank you.
Not a problem. I apologize for the outdated version. It was the first one that came up.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Hebert. Appreciate that. At this moment, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathering in the traditional territory of the Mohawk people of Akwesasne. Madam Clerk, we have roll call, please.
Acting Mayor Todd Bennett,
Present.
Councillors Claude McIntosh,
Here.
Eric Bergeron,
Present.
Sid Gardner,
Present.
Dean Hollingsworth,
Present.
Caroline Hébert,
Présente.
and Councillors Maurice Dupel,
Present.
Glenn Grant,
Present.
Justin Towndale,
Present.
and Elaine McDonald.
Present.
All present, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Additions, deletions, or amendments?
I have a few.
Go ahead, please.
We would like to move the communication item number 1 to be dealt with immediately following our second presentation. It's on the same subject matter. And we have the addition of a communication item number 3, Municipal Grants Program, extension for 2021.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add or delete? Councilor Towndale?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'd like to move consent item 1 into communications, please.
Anyone else? Could I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended, please? Councilor Dupel, Councilor Grant, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Need a motion to, oh, sorry, disclosures of interest. Seeing none. Thank you. Motion to go to the committee of the whole. Councilor McIntosh, Councilor Dupel, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes for Monday, May 31st and Monday, June 14th. Need a motion for that. Councilor Gardner, Councilor Towndale, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Presentations, Madam Clerk.
We have 2 presentations this evening. The first one is from our Senator Bernadette Clement.
Thank you. I must say it's a bit of an honor to be able to welcome you to your first council meeting back as a senator. Congratulations, Senator. It's obviously quite an honor, and it's a bit of a thrill for some of us to see you take on that new role, and we wish you nothing but success. Would you like to address the council, please?
I would, Mr. Acting Mayor Todd Bennett. It's good to see you too. I want to start by thanking you, vous remercier, for this opportunity to speak to you, gathered together as a council and through this assembly to speak to the people of Cornwall. The call from the Prime Minister to offer me a seat in the Senate of Canada came in on Friday, June 18, 2021. And I spoke to him about what an honor it is to be entrusted with his confidence, and that I was feeling great joy, but also sadness. I explained to him that the sadness was because I would have to resign as mayor of Cornwall. I spoke to him about all of you and about our city, and mostly about what an honor it has been to have been elected by the people of this community. I spoke about the joys and challenges of representing fellow citizens, especially during a pandemic. The sadness that I feel is about leaving council before finishing this term. I do not tend to leave things. I celebrated 30 years with the legal clinic in April of this year. I spent close to 15 years around this city council table and Zoom screen. I spent many years on the boards of Kinsman Community Residence, Maison Baldwin House, Inspire Community Support Services. And so my resignation as mayor feels very difficult and abrupt. I want you to know that I could not control the timing of this appointment, as we cannot truly control the timing of most events in life. I've learned that all one can control in life is the heart and spirit and energy and hard work that one puts into meeting the challenges of life. One of the challenges we have faced together is the work of getting through this pandemic, and we will get there. We're almost there. On est presque rendu. But it has been an intense, frustrating, painful, and ultimately impressive effort on the part of council, administration, and city employees, and on the part of healthcare heroes and essential workers and small and larger businesses, and very much on the part of individual residents of Cornwall. Notre communauté a été impressionnante dans cette lutte contre le virus. Nous avons fait preuve de beaucoup d'appui envers l'un et l'autre, ainsi que de beaucoup de courage. Over the last few days, I've looked through some of our council agendas from close to the 1,000 days of this term. It's remarkable to review the list of things on which we have moved forward together. We did this by building on the work of previous councils, by collaborating with one another and being supported by administration. There was not always agreement, and there shouldn't be. There was debate, a lot of it. There were often long but productive meetings. The pandemic did not take us off course from the provision of excellent and life-sustaining municipal services, nor did it prevent us from keeping our eye on strategic priorities that we set as a council. I want to highlight one particular project for our community, the Portlands. I want to commend the work of the previous council under the leadership of Mayor Leslie O'Shaughnessy in negotiating with the federal government to obtain the divestiture of the port and of some very strategic waterfront property. I've worked with this council. We have all worked together to honor, nurture, and respect our crucial relationship with our friends, neighbors, economic partners, the Mohawk people of Akwesasne. A respectful relationship and a successful endeavor of this nature will give our city confidence in our ability to manage unique and difficult community building projects that show the province and the country what we can do right here, chez nous. Ce que nous pouvons faire ensemble ici à Cornwall. Madam CAO, I want to thank you and your team of senior administrators. Your level of commitment and expertise has been consistently impressive. You are strategic, professional, and all of you are devoted to your work on behalf of the citizens of Cornwall. It's not easy work. It's done as it should be in a very transparent way, always with a focus on responding to the needs of residents. So many of our senior leaders are retiring or have retired, and they will be missed. But I'm truly excited about the new and younger staff in place. We're going to be in good hands for the future. I know that you all will continue to work in great collaboration with Council. I want to thank city employees. From the time that we wake up in the morning and turn on a tap, drive out onto a street or walk on a sidewalk to catch a bus or to play in a park, we are benefiting from the great work of a city employee. When you walk out your door, there is nowhere that your eyes can land that hasn't been touched by the hands of a city employee. We are grateful for your work and for the fact that this city continues to be a safe and beautiful place to live, even during this pandemic. Nous vous sommes tellement reconnaissants pour tout ce beau travail qui vient appuyer une qualité de vie remarquable. I want to speak to Council. I want to thank you. My relationship with each one of you has been a main focus for me during these last 3 years. I remember meeting each one of you at the beginning of this term. I offered as much time as you needed to talk, and each and every one of you took 2 hours to talk about your vision, about what you wanted to see for your city, about how you wanted to support those plans. I knew then that this would be a good term, that Cornwall had elected people who care deeply about where they live and who are ready and able to work together to keep building on our 237-year history. The community is in good hands with this council, which has shown itself to be engaged, talkative, chatty, thoughtful, and above all, respectful. Je vous remercie, mes chers collègues, pour ce mandat et pour le travail que nous avons fait ensemble. And to the people of Cornwall, I must also express heartfelt gratitude. I chose Cornwall 30 years ago, and Cornwall chose me back. And this is a place that tends to do that. in the friendliest of ways when people move here to work or retire or raise families or participate in community life. And I want to say this. Everything that I learned to do in my career, I learned to do right here in Cornwall. On the inaugural evening of December 3rd, 2018, we embarked together on a great journey, and I spoke of a magnificent story, which is not yet finished. We have worked together over these years to bring vitality and hope and a renewed confidence in ourselves as a community. We're very capable of doing great things. As you well know, I'm deeply proud of my heritage, proud of being the daughter of a maman franco-manitobaine, maman que je suis fière de pouvoir parler de toi, and the daughter of a Trinidadian pop. And I've been most honored to be the first woman mayor of Cornwall. It has been most heartening to me to have had little girls tell me that they would one day too run for mayor. That's a beautiful thing, because participation and involvement in public life by good people, whatever their gender or their race or beliefs, is essential to our precious democracy. Running for any kind of office shows respect for and commitment to our democratic institutions. I want to thank Etienne Saint-Aubin and Katie Verhoeven for helping me reach out to you through social media to make sure that as mayor, I was as connected as possible to the people of Cornwall. If I'm heading into the Senate now, it's in large part because of the people of Cornwall and their confidence in me. And I will carry that in my heart forever. Now I carry all the voices of our region and our country into the Senate, and your voices will be heard there. It's a tremendous opportunity to continue to work for the betterment of my fellow citizens and this magnificent land, which is our home. I will continue to work on their behalf, on your behalf, as a proud citizen and resident of this community, which I love dearly, que j'aime beaucoup. Let's continue to write history together. Ensemble, nous allons continuer cette belle histoire de Cornwall. Merci. Thank you. Niawa.
Thank you, Bernadette. I'm sure we have some people who would like to say a few things too. We'll start a speakers list. Who would like to go first? Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know one of the consistencies that you brought forth and talked about engagement of council. Well, when you were elected in my second term, I think you trained us all on that because you were the most engaged councillor that I've ever sat with, because there wasn't a topic that went by that say, anybody have any questions or comments? And Bernadette, you had a comment and a question for each one, but it got us engaged too, because it stimulated us to think. So thank you for that. And thank you for your consistency. You know, I supported you as mayor. I thought the city is going to really move forward with you as the mayor, and we're moving there. There's no question. So I'm been very happy working with you around the council table, and you've been supportive of me and the rest of the councillors. You don't have anything negative to say to anybody that I've ever heard. So good luck in your future, and you can always count on us to be there if you need us.
Thank you, Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hebert.
Hey, first of all, I know I should be addressing you as Madam Senator. And if you don't mind, for one last time, today I will address you as Madam Mayor. And forever in my heart will you be Madam Mayor. So Madam Mayor, as you already know, I'm experiencing significant mixed feelings about this whole situation. I am feeling immense pride for you and happiness for our country. You have always been destined for great things. I guess I'm being a little selfish, wishing it didn't happen so soon. Wishing we could keep you to ourselves, our not so secret weapon for progress and prosperity. My first term on council was no walk in the park. You are well aware of that. So much so that I wasn't planning on running for re-election until you decided to run for mayor. That changed everything. Having you at the head of this table, a strong, progressive woman, empowered me to find my voice. So I sit here today because of you and because of Councillor McDonald, who encouraged me to run in 2014. This is proof that representation matters. I'm also sad and a little bit worried. You have been shaping this community for 15 years and many more before that at the legal clinic. And I know you've had plenty of help along the way, but you have been a fierce leader for progress, for change, for inclusion, for vibrancy, and look how far you have come. This community is almost unrecognizable in the most beautiful way. I say community rather than city because your impact ripples far beyond Boundary Road and is felt in the United Counties and in Akwesasne and beyond. So I'm worried that without our fierce leader, our progress might slow down a little bit. But then I'm reminded that for the last 15 years, you have been inspiring an army of little Bernadettes, like me, who will continue to work, who is passionate for change, who wants to make a difference. So because of you, whether you are around this table or not, our future is bright. You have brought together this council, this community, and you will continue to make us proud, and we will do everything we can to make you proud. So thank you for choosing Cornwall. Thank you for choosing this community so many years ago. I know that we're also incredibly proud of you. What an achievement. And we are all watching, by the way, knowing your impact will just continue to grow and touch everyone across this country. So make us proud. Thank you for changing so many lives, mine included.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Councillor Rivera. Anybody else like to speak? Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. And hello, Bernadette. I think I won't think of you as Madam Mayor, I'll think of you as Bernadette. We've had a wonderful number of terms of council together, and anticipating that we'd be able to say something to you tonight after you spoke to us, I thought of one enduring contribution that you have made to the functioning of council, and that is with your promotion of the notion of a strategic plan, which of course you advocated for and achieved. We now have a strategic plan. I think what it did was let us operate in a proactive manner rather than a reactive manner. And it had a great benefit to us personally as a council, because in shaping that strategic plan, we had to share our ideas, we had to agree on priorities and goals. And I think a byproduct of that was a sense of unity that I haven't felt in previous councils, because everything we're working for has been decided upon and agreed upon by the group. And so we're acting literally all for the same thing and the same specific things. So thanks for so many things, Bernadette, but especially for the gift of unity at the council table.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Senator Clement, it's really a pleasure for me to say that, to have you have that commitment from the Prime Minister to lead Ontario and Canada and the way you've led us. I'm not going to repeat our discussion that we had this week after we found out that you, but at the end of the day, respect is a word that you used before, which you brought to the table, and made sure we respected each other. I think more than anything, it's the direction that you set us in, the positive direction that we will continue to carry what you've put forward and begun. We as a council will continue on the plan that you put forward in place as the mayor of Cornwall. I wish you the best of luck. You understand that. I repeated that to you the other day. You deserve everything you've gotten here. And the last comment I made to you on the phone was, please carry a big bell with you. So when the old senators start to fall asleep, maybe you can ring the bell and wake a few of them up as you woke us up. Good luck, Bernadette. Best of luck to you.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank you,
Gardner. Councilor DePel.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Acting Chair and Madam Senator Clement. I want to thank you for your leadership and the respect you brought around that council table and your commitment to our city and our residents. And on a personal note, what you were able to do for my mom. So for that, I say thank you, and I'm grateful that I've had 10 years around that council table and my first 8 years of sitting beside you. So for that, Bernadette, I thank you very much. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Councilor DePel.
Councilor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'm not sure how to follow that. Madam Senator, we had a very personal phone call yesterday. And I thank you for it. I'll address you as a councilor right now, which is that ultimately we've disagreed on several things over the last 3.5 years. But what I want to make clear to people is that in no way did that affect our relationship because of the way you lead, in that it is okay for a council to not have the same vote or end goal, in that we're all working towards the same improvement of our community. And so you were really a mentor in that, and I thank you for it.
Thank you, Councilor Bergeron.
Councilor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Well, Senator Clement, as the French would say, bon chance. I just wanted to point out, I've been a councillor for 5 terms. I've served under 4 mayors, and quite candidly, I think as far as the 2 points that I want to make, perhaps 3, I think quite frankly, as far as keeping council kind of as a cohesive unit, you were without question the best. Certainly managing council meetings have their highs and lows, as I suspect Councillor Bennett may find out this evening, but certainly you were respectful. You allowed us to work the rules in order to allow us all to say whatever we felt we needed to say. And ultimately, I always felt that I was treated fairly from the chair, consistently meeting in and meeting out. The second thing I want to point out is I think you've been an excellent spokesman for the city of Cornwall. I suppose you could say SDNG, but I'm a Cornwall councillor, so I'll talk from that kind of relationship. #1 cheerleader, excellent spokesperson, and certainly whenever you had to move out and talk about the city of Cornwall's issues, I knew would be well represented, and certainly had no question about the commitment from the mayor's chair. That being said, I believe you'll be a fabulous senator. Remember us little people back home, keep us in mind. And as I said, I hope you enjoy your tour of duty up in the big leagues. That being said, good luck and good luck. Good. We're out.
Thanks, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Senator, thank you for joining us tonight. I was just thinking about, I believe I first met you at a Brown Owl night in Toronto
many, many years ago in a different life, I think for both of us. Congratulations. I wanted to say that formally to you. I know we spoke on the weekend, but you know, I was part of your campaign to try to send you to the federal level previously. And while those were not successful, I think this is a very good fit for you. Your background in legal aid and municipal politics will give you quite the insight into what a senator should have, I believe. And I think it's great to have you there in Ottawa, not just representing us, but Canada as a whole. But I think we can be a little selfish. You're from our area. And with you and MP Duncan in Ottawa, you give us a very strong voice in Ottawa. So I think you can expect us to be in touch when we're looking for additional funding and when we're looking for assistance in those matters. And I can't really think of anyone better to represent us there. So again, congratulations. Look forward to working with you in your new capacity. I wish you all the best going forward. This is an exciting journey for you, and I know you'll embrace it and run with it.
Thank you, Councillor Towndale.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? I want to make sure I got everybody. Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. Two thoughts come to mind. Bernadette, the first time I saw you, you knocked on my door and you said you were running for office and had a quick chat. I came in the house and I said to my wife, you just won't make it. And I remember another time you came to my door, you were running for the Liberal Party, and there was a sign in my front yard and it said Clement. And you know I'm a diehard conservative. And what did I tell you? It's on my wife's half of the front yard. Anyway, you know, one thing that destroys many politicians is a lack of judgment in public. And you never suffered from that. You had your pulse in the community, tremendous judgment. You were able to size things up. And, really had a good control of council, and I think Dean mentioned you let us run loose at times, and I think we set a record for the number of meetings that went past 10 o'clock, but you know, it was all good. And I know we had a good chat on Friday afternoon at City Hall, and I think we're proud of you and wish you all the best. And there's one sad thing in all of this is that your mom didn't say this, but she is looking down and taking it all in with a big smile on her face. All the best. You'll do well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mack.
I think everyone has had a chance to speak. I'm obviously not going to repeat what many of my councillors have said, but I would like to thank you personally for your service to this city through your roles on committees, as a councillor and as a mayor, and as a friend to the community. You mentioned we had the 2-hour meetings before we started our term, and I remember that very well. And I can tell you at the time I wasn't thinking about you know, what our relationship was going to be like, but I can tell you that you have become a mentor to me, and I appreciate more than you'll know the guidance that you've provided to me personally in some conversations outside of meetings, in steering me in the right direction or helping me even wrap my head around things that were hard for me to figure out at the time when you're new to municipal politics. You know, I look at all the things that you've been a part of as far as, you know, voting for projects within the city or leading projects within the city. And it was, well, I think that would be a good legacy on its own. I don't think that's going to be your legacy. I think what your legacy is going to be is how you've been able to inspire young women and girls in our community of all ethnic backgrounds to be all they can be. You showed them that you can be a lawyer and a counselor and a mayor and a leader of your community, and that you can teach all people something new just with your, you just have a way of getting ideas across. It's always respectful. And I can see little girls looking up at you and thinking, boy, if I could aspire to be half of that, what a success I will be. So that is what I think your legacy will be to this city. And I've really appreciated being a colleague for the last 3 years, more than you will know. But now that that relationship is somewhat over, I now look forward to being your friend. And so when you have spare time, I hope you give us a ring and let's get together for a dinner or a chat so I can get the lowdown on what's going on in the Senate. I would appreciate that. So thank you for being here tonight. I do appreciate that you wanted to reach out and speak to everyone and tell us how all this happened. And I'm sure your city appreciates all of your efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor Todd Bennett. Thank you to all of you. What remarkable comments. I appreciate it. I can't take all this credit you're giving me. You are remarkable council, and the city's in good hands. You've all got this. No worries. Councillor Elaine McDonald, thank you for asking me to run in 2006. Thank you. Yeah. Take care,
Well,
everyone.
Until we meet again, thank you.
Until we meet again. Bonjour.
Wow. Time to move on. Our next presentation is an introduction to the AMPS program for bylaw services. Madam CAO, did you want to introduce this, or should I just go straight to Mr. Bray?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I think we can have Mr. Bray come up. So this evening we have a presentation, and then per the clerk's comments at the beginning, we also have a communication report that we'd like to deal with following the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Bray, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Good evening, Council, as well. It's kind of hard to follow something like that. I've been attending council meetings for well over 20 years, and I've never felt this nervous, but bear with me. We just wanted to introduce a concept called AMPS, Administrative Monetary Penalties. As you know, there will be a report following this. But before I begin, I just want to essentially say we're not changing a process per se. It's going to be very similar to what we currently do. It'll just be administered in-house as opposed to the conventional way through provincial courts. So with that, I'll just share my screen and we'll jump right into the presentation. So everyone can see that?
Yes.
Great. So as I said, this is the Administrative Monetary Penalty System, referred to as AMPS. So what AMPS is, it's as I was mentioning, it's a program that will be administering through the city, and it's a way to perhaps be more efficient, more effective in the way that bylaw matters are dealt with. And as you'll see as I go through the presentation, we're speaking more of minor bylaw infractions. And I'll get into those in a second. So those minor infractions that I'm referring to could be, parking related, perhaps property standards, and we could also introduce any other bylaws within the city, for example, open air burning or streets bylaw. All these different bylaws can be incorporated into an AMPS program. AMPS is by no means a new concept. It's been around for around 10 to 12 years or so. It's a program that's managed or administrated through the Municipal Act at our level. However, AMPS programs are also being used by agencies, whether they're provincial or federal or just standalone agencies as well. So it's quite commonly used in a different variety of venues. And here I have just an example of some agencies that do use it. So, one that comes to mind is just right at our borders here, the Canadian Border Services Agency uses this, the Retirement Homes Regulatory Authority, as well as many municipalities. And that ranges in populations. We do have one municipality here that has a population of about 1,200. There's another one around the 7,000 mark. And then you have your larger cities that are 600,000 or million. So it is adaptable at pretty much any level. So it is something that we could quite easily introduce here into the city. And as I was mentioning when I was beginning, AMPS is very comparable to our current system, which is the Provincial Offences Act. It just that it would be administered internally as opposed to in the court system. So there's a lot of benefits to that, and I'll get to the benefits very shortly. But we think that this would be a very appropriate manner in helping to deal with these minor infractions, and it'll be able to be more efficient and more cost effective for everyone involved. So it's a way where if an individual does receive what we call a penalty notice or a ticket in the conventional system, that gives the opportunity for that individual to, if they're not satisfied with the penalty they received, or they had a dispute, there's a mechanism in place, much like the court system, so that allows them to go through that process. And I'll touch on the hearing in a second. But it is much more, it's quicker in the process when we're able to manage it internally. As it is now with the courts, we have to wait a long amount of time in order to get a hearing. And this can vary anywhere from a couple months, 6 months, and even sometimes a year before the matter is actually heard before the courts. And as you all know, currently with the pandemic, there's not a lot of hearings that have been occurring, and they've modified their approach. So there's a tremendous amount of congestions in the court right now. So this would be a benefit to get these matters resolved quicker in our with an AMPS program internally. So I'll explain a little bit about the process. So a penalty notice is very much the same as, for example, a parking ticket or any ticket that you would receive from a minor bylaw infraction. Except rather than paying a fine, it's a penalty. So essentially, it's pretty much the same thing. And is there an additional cost compared to the conventional process? No, it's exactly the same. So whatever the current monetary fines we have now, the penalties will be equivalent. So there's no change in that approach. It's essentially the same process. So when an officer issues a penalty notice, the individual has a couple of options. So similar to a ticket, they can pay the ticket or the fine, or they can request a review. And if they request a review, so this would be the equivalent to appearing before court, the review will be processed either through a screening or a hearing. So there's two levels of the review. So the initial step is a screening officer. And I'll just compare it to our current, our tickets for parking. Presently, if someone wants to dispute a parking ticket, there is an opportunity for them to have a screening, and that is what we call first attendance. So it gives an opportunity for the individual to provide some explanation to why they were where they were when they received that ticket, and it gives the opportunity for the individual hearing the first attendance to make a decision whether they amend the amount or rescind it. So that process is very similar to the AMPS. So if you want your penalty notice to be reviewed, there will be a screening officer that will listen to your arguments and to your points about why you believe it should be amended or perhaps rescinded. So that screening officer will make that decision. And if the individual is still not satisfied with the results of the screening, there is a second opportunity for a further review, which is the hearing officer. So the hearing officer would be a third party, so not an internal staff individual. So it will maintain the transparency of the process. So we're still kind of working behind the scenes. We're speaking with other municipalities to gather the best approach to that. But for example, we could have those hearings once a month, depending on the volume, obviously. But and that individual would be someone that has some experience in its administrative procedures, perhaps some background. Doesn't necessarily have to be a legal background, but there's many different approaches. Could be, for example, it could be a retired police officer, or it could be perhaps someone that had a former lawyer that's retired. Or anyways, there's different approaches to that, but that process. So the review process gives you 2 steps in order to have your the matter reviewed. And either officer, so whether it's at the screening level or at the hearing level, they will make a decision based on the evidence that's presented to them to either affirm, amend, or rescind the notice and the penalty. So very similar to the current court proceedings. And additionally, the officer also has the opportunity to provide for some additional time if the individual needs extended period of time to pay a penalty, for example. That time can be granted as well if that's part of the request. And then as far as an actual payment, whether that is at the initial onset when they've received the notice, or if they've gone through the appeal process, there's many methods of payments, whether it's online, by mail, we'll have a drop box, so they can do it in person here at the complex, or by phone. So the ease is going to definitely be there. And why do we think that this AMPS process is better? When we go through a typical court proceeding, for various reasons, sometimes there's adjournments that are requested by the defense, or there could be just getting a hearing before the courts. As they are now, they are quite backlogged. So this could be resolved perhaps in a matter of weeks, as opposed to months, or even some cases have been known to drag on to a year or longer. So this would help the process in being more efficient and more expedient for all those that are involved. It would also allow our officers to focus more on responding to calls for service, as opposed to preparing for court. Those of you that had the pleasure to attend court, everyone pretty much is scheduled at 9 o'clock, and you just wait your turn. So sometimes, we might be there for a couple hours before our matter is heard. So when we do have officers attending court, it does tie them up, and they're not able to be attending to other matters for their regular duties. So this will be a cost savings on our part in that regard. And this whole process is going to be far less bureaucratic than appearing in court. The hearing officer or the screening officer will be the one that will be proceeding the matter, and it's a more informal approach, but still allowing the individuals to have their opportunity to request a review. And ultimately, it is a cost saving for the city. Whenever we do have to appear in court, we are required to be represented by legal counsel. So again, those are significant savings that we could benefit from, because not only do our officers have to wait for our matter to be heard, but if we're being represented by legal counsel, they in turn are also waiting for the matter to be heard. So sometimes minor infractions end up costing 10, 12-fold what the actual amount is based on the time that staff is involved in this process. So that was a very high-level introduction to what an AMPS program could be for the city. And I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Acting Mayor. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer that. Or if we wanted to proceed to the report, I'll leave that up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. Do we have any questions on this, or would we prefer to move forward to the report and then do it all at once? I'll leave that up to council. Can we get the screen share off at the moment, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, Councilor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. My question's pretty straightforward. I saw a lot of benefits there. What's the downside here? Is this a longer process for people paying fines? It just seemed very good for us. I really support it. It looks great, but I'm just curious what the downside would be to implementing something like this.
Mr. Bray?
Looks frozen.
It appears he is frozen.
Great question.
He froze him in his tracks, Councilor Bergeron.
Yeah.
Left him speechless, Mr. Councilor Bergeron.
That's right. Madam CAO?
Is he going to try and?
It looks like he's gone out and going to try and come back.
I can wait. If someone else has a question, please proceed.
This never happens at a live council meeting, does it? Councilor Gardner?
Yeah, thank you for this report, and I'm really going to support this because one of the complaints that I had most from all the bylaw officers I spoke to over time was the fact that they have to spend so much time in courts, which took away from their job of implementing whatever they had to do. So this report is great. I really, really appreciate it. And I think it'll do a lot of good and save a lot of time. Thank you, Mr. Bray. Just a comment, not a question.
Thank you, Councilor Gardner. Mr. Bray is coming back in, so we'll just wait a moment. Welcome back, Mr. Bray.
Yes, I'm not sure what happened there. As soon as I stopped sharing, my computer froze.
That's okay. Well, I think it was Councilor Bergeron's question that maybe it freaked you out. So we'll go back to Councilor Bergeron for his question.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, it looks like these are only good things that happen from this, and I'm very supportive of it. But is there something, for the taxpayer, the person being fined? Is this a longer process? Is there something here that I'm missing? It just seems like a fantastic program.
Well, to the contrary, it's actually much quicker. Sorry, Mr. Acting Mayor, through you. It is much quicker as opposed to for individuals waiting in court for their turn to speak. I also believe to some extent that it could be a little less imitating than having to go to court. It's not everybody that wants to go to court, so perhaps it gives the opportunity for individuals to be more comfortable in an environment with a hearing where it's a less formal and more friendly approach. So it will be much quicker in that regard as well.
Thank you. Look, I'm fully supportive of it. Can you give a rough idea of how many kind of court dates we're talking about in the course of a year? I'm not sure that I know how long our bylaw officers spend sitting in a courtroom.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, that is always dependent on the individuals. When they do receive an infraction, they have an option to either pay or they can request a trial. So that will vary. We could have 1 to 2 a year. We could have 1 to 2 a month. It all depends.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bergeron. Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. Madam, sorry, force of habit. Through you, Mr. Bray, how long does this take to implement? What is the actual implementation period?
Mr. Bray.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. We tentatively have a kind of a date in mind where we'd like to have this in place for January 1st. As you'll see in the report, we do have a draft bylaw that's prepared. So that's only part of the work. We have some internal stuff that we need to, some logistics. We're speaking with our software provider that currently do some of our ticketing currently, as a matter of switching it over. So there's some homework we have to do internally, but we think we can reasonably have that ready for a January 1st implementation.
Good. I looked at all the benefits and as Councillor Bergeron had said, it looks too good, but there are great benefits. So I'm looking forward to voting on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor McIntosh?
Yeah, I want to go back to something Eric touched on. We're talking about minor offenses, parking tickets. We're not talking about major housing infractions or things like that. We're talking about the bottom meters.
Mr. Bray?
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. These will be for more minor type infractions. So in the jargon with provincial offense tickets, the current system, there's part 1s and part 3s. Part 2s are parking tickets, and those require a vehicle to be involved. So if we only talk about part 1s and part 3, this would be the part 1 of the equation. Anything that is a more serious matter would go through the conventional system through a part 3, and that would still go through the court system as it currently exists.
Okay, one other thing, when it comes to hearing officers, you mentioned possibly a retired police officer, whatnot. What are other communities using for hearing officers? Are there always people that are tied to the justice court system?
Mr. Bray?
To you, Acting Mayor. Not necessarily. Different approaches have been taken by different communities. For example, one community went through an RFP process. It ended up being that it was a legal firm that was awarded the contract. It could be a retired school teacher, not necessarily someone that's in the legal system. When we prepare the requirements for the hearing officer, it is someone that has to have some knowledge of procedural law and administrative. So it is open pretty much to different individuals, but there has to be some requirements, and we'll further elaborate that in a hearings officer bylaw.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you. Mr. Hollingsworth?
To Mr. Acting Mayor, I kind of want to say Mr. Acting Your Worship, but it just doesn't seem to fit. So I'll go with Acting Mayor for now. Mr. Bray, 2 questions. Number 1, in light of the fact that, as Councillor Bergeron already pointed out, it seems like there's only an upside and no downside. Why would we wait till now to implement this? And I don't know if it was in the report, but why wouldn't we have considered something like this, say, 3 years ago or 5 years ago, when it doesn't seem to have any downside?
Mr. Bray?
Through you, Acting Mayor. So that is a good question. The only I can say is that myself and Bernadine, that's working with me, we started talking about this relatively short time ago, maybe about 6 months ago. We're both new to the bylaw side of the things. I was mostly focused on building. And then as I progressed in this role, I learned and researched this more and thought that this was a great opportunity for us. And that's why I'm bringing it before council now. That's really all I can say about it, why we haven't done it sooner. I see this as a great opportunity. That's why I'm bringing it to council.
Fair enough. The second question, Mr. Acting Mayor, and it may end up going to the fire chief. I'm not sure who wants to tackle this. I have a fire in my backyard. It's an illegal fire. I don't have a permit. Maybe I don't meet the measurements, whatever it is I've done wrong. Is it the fire department that issues a ticket if I've broken that law, or is it bylaw that does it? I can't remember. And whoever wants to try it.
Madam CEO, do you know where you would like to direct that question?
Sorry, my volume was cutting out. Can I have the question again?
Somebody has a fire in their backyard. It's an illegal fire. fire department is called, they show up, they recognize maybe it's only a 4x4 foot fire, but it's illegal, they don't have a permit, whatever's going on. Fire department issue that ticket or bylaw guys issue that ticket?
So if the call comes into dispatch, then fire would be dispatched to the resident's location with the fire. Fire would respond. And if there's a breach, then there's likely a, I guess, a ticket that would be issued. We have Chief Weber here as well at the meeting. And he can also answer that question.
I see I'm ready to roll.
Mr. Weber?
Chief Weber.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yes, our response crews probably wouldn't issue that ticket immediately. Our fire prevention officers would issue that ticket the next day.
Okay. Now that being said, probably back to you, Mr. Bray. Does that particular infraction fall under this new policy?
Mr. Bray?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yes, we can include a variety of different bylaws that we want into the SAMPS program, and this one could definitely be included in. That would give the opportunity for the individual to go through the review process if they choose to.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Thank you, ladies, gentlemen, for your answers. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So I just want to clarify something before I ask my question. Did you say parking infractions would be covered by this program or not?
To you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yes, we can include parking in this program as well.
Good. Then my question is this: what mechanism do you see of being able to use for those who choose not to pay a penalty? A lot of people just collect parking tickets, and there is a provincial mechanism to eventually catch up to them. What do you anticipate doing? Have you thought that far ahead, what you'll do with the scofflaws?
Mr. Bray?
Yes, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Essentially the same process that exists with provincial offenses currently. If a parking ticket is not paid, we can go through the I believe it's Administrative Attorney General. I might have that part wrong, but that process would, as you mentioned, catch up to them. So when they do go to renew their license, we still have that opportunity to register on their on their license.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DePel.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bray, for the great presentation. I just want to say that, you know, from phone calls that I've received over the last several months, that bylaw has really stepped up. I think that with Ms. McAvoy Robertson's involvement and Mr. Bray's leadership, that bylaw has definitely moved forward. Just the difference in the employee scheduling and everything is to be commended. So thank you, Mr. Bray, and your team. And I fully support the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Councillor DePel. Any other questions? I didn't miss anybody? Okay, so I realize we'll have the report after this, but just to finish this off, I need a motion to receive this report. Councillor Towndale, Councillor Gardner, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to the report. Madam Clerk, did you want to introduce this, please?
Yes. So the recommendation on that report is that council accept this report and draft bylaw to establish an administrative monetary penalty system as presented and proceed to further direct administration to prepare the bylaw for consideration at a future council meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bergeron, Councillor DePel. Any questions, or do we cover them all? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bray. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Good evening, Council.
Okay, so moving on from here, there are no delegations. Moving to consent reports.
So our first one will be tender 21 T11, supply and delivery of one 2021 pumper apparatus for Cornwall Fire Services, with the recommendation that this tender be awarded to Fort Garry Fire Truck Limited from Winnipeg, Manitoba, at the total bid price of $1,009,751.05. And that is the only consent item to be considered.
Have a mover? Councillor Hébert, Councillor Hollingsworth, any questions? None, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you.
Moving on to reports from unfinished business. The first one is rainbow crosswalks in celebration of Pride Week, with a recommendation that council receive this report.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Would you like to lead this off, please?
I think we had a resolution prior to unfinished business listing.
Yes, my apologies. The recommendation didn't move through, so let me find it in my package. A very important resolution. Whereas the Council of this Corporation of the City of Cornwall has recently received the official resignation of one of its members, and whereas pursuant to Section 262(1) of the Municipal Act, Council shall declare the seat vacant, and whereas once declared vacant, Council shall select the manner in which it shall fill the vacancy. Whereas a report is being presented to Council at the same meeting of June 28th, 2021, outlining the options on how to fill that vacancy. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the City of Cornwall now declare the seat vacant.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Grant, Councillor Towndale. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Now for the unfinished business items. Rainbow crosswalks in celebration of Pride Week, with the recommendation that council receive this report.
Do I have a motion to receive? Councillor McDonald, Councillor DePel, questions? Comments? Seeing none. All in, oh, sorry, Councillor Hébert.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I guess I'll be brief. This is obviously not the report I was expecting. I don't think most of the questions I had at the last meeting have been answered here. It's just a reiteration of the previous report. So after this motion passes, I will propose a follow-up motion to add money in our 2022 budget to include a permanent thermoplastic rainbow crosswalk. So it is recommended. I will make sure we have that motion following this one. So I'm not really pleased with this. I know that there was a meeting with Diversity Cornwall, and I want to make there was a note in the in that letter that Diversity provided administration that they are supportive of the Justice Building as an alternative location. I think there was a bit of confusion. I spoke with the president of Diversity Cornwall earlier today. She is under the impression that meant on the road, not on the sidewalk. I think administration believes that they're supportive of the sidewalk or somewhere in front of the Justice Building, but not the road. They were under the impression it is to be on the road. So I maybe want some clarification on that before we proceed.
Okay, Madam CEO, who I see Mr. Fothrop's on the screen. Should we direct this to him?
Absolutely. So if there's a question, Mr. Fothrop can respond.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So yes, I think we were under the impression that what Diversity of Cornwall preferred was on the Justice Building property, not necessarily on the road, but yeah, anyway. That was our understanding of what their preference was.
Okay, I think there was some confusion there. They've confirmed with me today. They thought when they meant Justice Building in front of the Justice Building on the road somewhere, which when I think of it doesn't quite make sense because there's no stop, there's no red light other than further down. So I think when we do reevaluate this with this as a budget item we should reevaluate locations. It was mentioned that First Street and Pitt might be ideal. I think that might be the best location, so that we can make sure that this is on the street and not on a sidewalk somewhere. So I will just not support this report, as it's not fulfilling what I was expecting, but I will follow up with a secondary motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I agree with Councillor Hebert. I won't actually be voting to receive this report. It's not what we asked for. Certainly not what I expected to come back. I was expecting to see some options. This is just a continuation of the report from 2 weeks ago. If Councillor Hebert is bringing forward a motion to bring this to budget, then I'm all for it, because there's no budget mention in here, which would have made voting on a crosswalk relatively difficult for me. So I won't be receiving the report. I do, of course, support the idea of a crosswalk, but I just think this report missed the mark from what we asked for. I reread the motion and it was a little bit vague, but I think the conversation around the motion and the support for it was pretty clear. So I will not be receiving it. I'd like to see it come back better. I will support it going to budget though. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yeah, I too, when I read the letter on page 55, Councillor Hebert kind of already touched on it. The letter kind of indicates, or the sense I get is their expectation is it's on the road. Admin is saying, well, no, we think it's just in front of the Justice Building. And I was under the impression that the original motion that was sent back, and perhaps Councillor Hebert can clarify, but it's specifically, I got the gist of tell us what streets we can put it on. So sure, maybe Pitt and Second doesn't work, but what are some other streets that potentially might be lesser? So I probably won't vote in favor of receiving the report either, because I didn't really answer what I was looking for. Maybe that's just me. And there does seem to be some confusion in terms of the letter from this particular group in terms of what they were expecting versus what administration seems to be interpreting. And I wasn't part of the meeting, so I'm certainly not going to guess. But because there's still more questions than answers, I'm probably going to vote against the motion to receive. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Anyone else have a question or comment? Councillor Towndale, then Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I tend to agree with my colleagues. I understand where they're coming from on this. I too was a little surprised at the report because I don't recall this being exactly what we requested. One thing I wanted to point out, though, that was interesting, we debated this last week, or sorry, correction, at the last meeting, and there's a reference in this report that there is no case law to reference when it comes to enhanced liability specifically to changing a crosswalk. I know that we're talking about the rules that exist in the province, but there has not yet been any case law to reference where it shows that there was actually an increased liability to any municipality. So I think that gives us something to work on going forward. I just wanted to highlight that, and I look forward to the next motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Towndale. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'm just curious because the letter from Diversity Cornwall from Liz Kenville, her last paragraph, when she talks about, we understand that the MTO may be releasing formal guidance on artistic crosswalks in the future, and therefore this request may not be feasible in advance of the 2021 Pride celebrations. We appreciate the city continue to explore this important initiative further. So to me, they sound like they're supportive of this initiative, but it's just a matter of deciding where do we go next. So receiving this report basically is just say we're continuing to investigate where we go next. So to me, there's no harm in receiving this report because we know from this conversation, this is going to go further. So I don't have any problems receiving this because I think that we're going to resolve the issue down the road, whether it be through budget time or through consultations with Diversity Cornwall.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'd like to know, and I suppose my question is directed to the clerk, what is the repercussion of us not receiving a report? What's the practical effect of that?
Madam Clerk, thank you.
It just means that you're not receiving the report, so nothing is moving forward.
Did that answer your question, Councillor McDonald?
I guess so, in a sense, because I mean, I read this the same way that Councillor Grant did. This is, I think we started this too late to have it done for this year, but there's every indication here that this is an ongoing discussion, and for this year, we'll get the mural, but I'm pretty confident that whatever road markings are compatible with what MTO suggests, we will be moving on when we can. So I would hate to have the effect be that we're just sort of slamming the door on what we've got here. This, I think we should read it more that this is a work in progress, but it's very much in progress.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Anyone else with a comment? I just have a question, the CEO or to Mr. Fothrop. If this report is received, does that mean that the work continues? Or if this report is voted against, does that mean it stops here? I just want to make sure we're all clear on that.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, I think that staff, just to be clear, staff are supportive of the idea around having a rainbow crosswalk. We're conservative in our review of this with respect to MTO standards and limitation of liability and risk to the corporation. So I believe that Councillor Hebert was looking for some costing information, which we've provided. But to recommend an intersection right now, we're not recommending an intersection. We would recommend that we monitor the work that's being done at MTO. I think that this is happening throughout many municipalities. The MTO is recognizing that, and they are going to, we're anticipating within a year or so, they're going to be issuing some standards around these types of crosswalks. So we would anticipate putting money aside in the budget for it in the future, but we would like to wait for the MTO standards to do it. If we implemented something and if there was a risk that what we implemented was not up to MTO standards, then we'd have to turn around and want to correct that. So we're just simply requesting that until we get more guidance from the MTO, can we hold off until that point? If council receives the report, the item is not missed with administration. We're going to continue to monitor what MTO is doing to progress to make decisions with respect to these standards.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that for me. Do we have any other comments, questions? Councillor Gardner? You're muted.
And
there you go. Yep.
Oh, you're out again.
There you
all
go.
right, I'm in favor of the crosswalk being done, but as our CAO has suggested, and what I read in the report is that BLG, our lawyers and the insurers are suggesting that we wait, that it's a liability. I don't have a problem with the rainbow crosswalks. I would suggest that we wait until MTO comes with their legal advice of how we should handle this. And I think it'll come across Canada and Ontario what it is that we can do without worrying about liabilities or worrying about our insurance going through the roof. So I'm going to support the recommendation to start it off and to keep it going. I don't want to see it stopped tonight because we didn't do what the recommendation has suggested. I'm still in favor of it, but not right now. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor McIntosh, I saw your hand up, I believe.
Yeah, the last time this came up, I expressed concern that MTO, insurance company's lawyers, and our own corporate lawyers advised us to tread carefully until more work was done on the background. And I really resent, and I'll call them label slappers, suggesting, because I said that we should hold off on this, that somehow I'm a racist, okay? Or anybody else is a racist. Not the case at all. I'm accepting good legal advice. If anybody in this has a business and your lawyer said to you, be careful, and you said, no, don't worry, I'll go ahead anyway. I think you'd have to reconsider very quickly. This is simple, you read it, and when your insurance company says be careful, when your lawyers say be careful, and you say to hell with it, I'm moving ahead anyway, you're putting the taxpayers in this community at risk. We can pass this report, and it doesn't do away with this. It just means we want more information before we commit ourselves to this. Simple as that, not rocket science.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would just say that when this was originally brought forward and a motion from Councillor Hebert, I believe I was a seconder on that motion, and I strongly believe we should have a crosswalk. But I think receiving this report doesn't stop it. And the fact that the MTO has recognized that this is something that more and more communities want to do to show support for these communities, then I don't see a problem with accepting the report. It's not going to die here. But if we waited until MTO actually gave us recommendations and proper guidance on how to do this properly, I don't see the harm in that either. I would, however, be interested if Councillor Hebert was to bring a motion forward to send this to budget, because I think that makes sense, because that puts it into 2022, which is when we expect a report. So I will be supporting the motion. If there's no other comments, could I have a vote to see who's in favor of the motion? Opposed? Madam Clerk?
So that is a tie vote, Mr. Acting Mayor. So the motion is defeated for want of majority.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'd like to propose a motion that administration include the permanent thermoplastic rainbow crosswalk in the 2022 capital budget, which is compliant with guidelines to be issued by the TAC. If I can get a seconder.
Councillor DePel seconds. Discussion? Seems pretty cut and dry. Councillor McIntosh?
Just, I'm not speaking against the motion, but administration will be asking us to approve this in the 22 budget. Correct?
Correct. Anyone else? Councillor Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'm just curious, it's a carte blanche. We don't have a location, and just that it happens in our next budget. There's no location here at all. It's just to have it done. Is that correct?
Councillor Baird, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, of course. I think in the report it states that if we were to proceed with this, it'd be further consultation with Diversity Cornwall and the community at large. So this puts the money in the budget, but then would signal administration to have those conversations before we actually go ahead and implement. I think we have some options here, but I think along with the funding in the budget, there will be further conversations once we cross that bridge, or once we cross that crosswalk.
Is that satisfactory, Councillor Grant?
Thank you. I just needed clarification because the motion with the report was defeated, so there was no real clarification in the motion. So if we could get more meat to it, I'd understand what I'm voting on.
Okay. You have any suggestions, Councillor Grant, would you like to see in the motion? Possibly a friendly amendment?
It's not my motion.
Fair enough. Councillor Hebert.
Sure, we could add at the end and that administration consult with Diversity Cornwall and community members as per location prior to installation.
Does that provide clarification, Councillor Grant?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comments? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Can I just get the actual motion read, Mr. Acting Mayor? Everybody looking at you weird, but when we start going off the rails, I want to make sure I know what I'm voting for.
Fair enough. Madam Clerk.
I hope I captured just about everything on that motion. So I have that administration include the thermal painted crosswalk in 2022 budget, and that administration consult with Diversity Cornwall and the community for its location.
Is that accurate? Excellent. All right. I see no further comments. All in favor? Opposed? And I believe that's carried. So, next up, yep, go ahead.
Our next report is the temporary closure of Pitt Street for summer weekends, with a recommendation that council authorize the temporary closure of Pitt Street from 2nd Street to 1st Street, and then again from 1st Street to 58 Pitt Street on the dates requested.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam CEO, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So staff have brought together a report with some consolidated comments across various departments. We have put those in the report. I think that depending on the questions council might have, we have various managers here on the call. Part of what we've looked at is trying to make sure that in the event of an emergency or first responders, we have the ability to still be able to have our vehicles work through that area. Ideally, curb to curb would be pedestrian traffic, and then that could easily be opened up if there had to be an emergency vehicle that had to work its way through Pitt Street. There has been a fair amount of work with administration in the background, also speaking to a couple of the individuals mentioned in the report and working with the DBIA. I think that depending on council's decision tonight, there will still be more work that will need to be done in the days ahead to make sure that we have encumbrance agreements in place and everybody is aware of how we're going to operate.
Thank you. I'll look to council for questions or discussion. Councillor McDonald, followed by Councillor Townville.
Okay, a simple question first and then a follow-up. 58 Pitt Street, what is the business of that address?
Madam CEO or whoever.
58 Pitt Street.
I can help with that comment, Madam CAO. So that is Mexicali Rosas. So we had an objection filed by the business immediately south. They have a driveway to a shared driveway between two businesses that is to access those two businesses for parking and the business itself. And so we put that the closure stops in front of Mexicali Rosas and not impede on those two businesses south.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay, and what does this achieve that's simply ending the closure at 1st Street? Like if we kept traffic flowing from 1st Street south so that people could enter the mall parking, I don't see what the exception for 58 achieves. You know, instead of just saying we'll let traffic flow.
Who would like to tackle that? Madam CEO.
So I also have Mr. Boileau on the call. So I think by setting it up that way, Mexicali Rosas would still have space available to them in front of their business, right? So it just allows for more outdoor space.
Okay, so then a consideration that we looked at earlier that where somebody suggested that we stop the street closure at First Street so that people would have access to parking in the mall. So that's not on the table anymore then. Obviously, people would not be able to. And I mean, I'm in favor. I drove down the street Sunday twice, just checking, and I have to say Mexicalis Rose was open and it was flourishing. So I can see why they need this space. But this means then we're not going to concern ourselves with parking in the mall parking. I guess it's simply yes or no.
So we're going
The
to.
answer is yes, I guess.
Right. We'd keep that area though open to access to the Cornwall Square, so that it's not going to impede any of that business that's opening as a result of the lifting of restrictions.
Okay, so I understand that this is being driven by the DBIA and the chamber. And since I did observe when I drove down the street on Sunday, I went a couple of times, not every business that I might have expected to be open was open. So I don't know what kind of commitment we have that some of the patios that are there during the week, that they'll be open on the weekend as well. But in a sense, we don't have to worry about that because this is being driven by the chamber and the DBIA. And I would hope that if they find that they're not seeing the increased business that they hope to see by us eliminating car traffic, that if they feel that it's not working, that at some point during the summer, they'd simply ask for things to be changed back to how they are now, for example. Is that, do I understand correctly how that might work?
Madam CEO?
So, yeah, so I, like the businesses that are open on Sunday, I don't know if they'll change or not open on Sunday. I don't know if they're going to change their plans for that.
Right. Okay, so given our history in this town with having stopped vehicular traffic on what we used to call the Pitt Street Mall, and yeah, I think it ended rather negatively until we reversed it. And I think there are those who could argue that it was negative on Spark Street too. I just hope that if at some point the businesses themselves felt that they weren't getting the advantage they hoped they'd get, then that this isn't an edict for the entire summer, that we'd be flexible about this and we could modify it at their request later on. I guess that's all. I just hope that contingency would be built into our plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I would like to move the recommendation.
Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Bergeron. Any further comments? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Just on a similar vein to Councillor McDonald's comments, and I didn't see it in the report, so maybe I missed it. But if what happens if some businesses feel like they're having success with this and some businesses in this particular corridor are unsuccessful or not seeing the results? What happens then?
Madam CEO.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Well, we're working with the DBIA and the chamber, so I would hope that if something wasn't working, or it's a pilot, right? We've picked 4 weekends to try it. So I would hope that if it wasn't generating the success that it's hoping for, I would anticipate that the DBI and the chamber would re-engage in conversations with the city, and we might have to adjust or maybe make a change of plans. We'll see what we can do. I think that everybody's trying to accomplish the same thing. We want to try and find space outdoors that everybody can enjoy, that will help businesses. It's not an event per se, but it's just to allow hopefully a better experience in the downtown area while we're trying to get out of the restrictions that we're currently in.
Okay, that being said, I get the gist of it. I support it. It's great. Any way to try to help businesses succeed. But I guess I always kind of want to make sure that every voice is heard And if anybody's listening out there in Cogeco land, that if they're not seeing the results that they're hoping for, that they would express their frustration with either council or admin, because if it's not going, that means we make plans in this world, they don't always shake out the way we've hoped for. So I guess I just hope that if it isn't going well, somebody, whether it be the DBIA or the businesses themselves, let us know, and that we can make adjustments, because I would hate to see it kind of being like a couple of people sort of pushing the agenda. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I will support the motion. I get where it's going, and I look forward to, hopefully it'll be a smashing success. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Justin, Councillor Towndale, sorry, you made the motion. I went away from you after that. So the floor is yours.
That's okay, Mr. Acting Mayor. We'll give you a few mulligans there. No, thank you for coming back to me. I just wanted to thank the administration, particularly the clerk, for working on this. I know there was a lot of work involved with a tight time frame, and there's obviously a big result that came out of it when looking at the reports and the comments from the various agencies and departments that provided input on what was feasible, what wasn't. You know, this again, this came out of a collaboration between Hassan from Schnitzels and the DBIA and the chamber, and they were all consulted on this. I know the other businesses within the blocks were spoken to. I'm glad there's some compromises here as requested by some businesses, as indicated 58 Pitt Street. You know, it allows Mexi's to have a patio, but it allows for traffic to enter the businesses just south of it. So I think that's a positive thing. And I'm hoping that these weekends will be successful. And now that we're changing the phase of lockdowns we're in, and you know, with Canada Day festivities unfortunately canceled, this may give an opportunity for our residents to do something else instead and support local businesses. So looking forward to seeing where this goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Towndale. Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I just wanted to say that I fully support this. I did last year as well, and this is the type of thing I was hoping would have came from a report last year. I also just want to say to other groups of businesses that if you have an idea that can help you, that this council can help you with your business during the summer, please bring it forward. You know, the DBIA and the chamber are working on this one, but there are other business districts, there are other regions, and if there is something creative that needs council's kind of approval to please don't hesitate. I'm happy to push it forward. This is really an important summer for a lot of businesses. So at the end of the day, I do support this, but it's not in a vacuum. There are other things we can be doing, and I want to be listening to those types of things. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yeah, I just, you know, again, I fully support this idea. And, you know, the DBIA and the chamber are behind this, supporting it, and they're the go-to guys when it comes to if you have a business in that area, and if you have a complaint about being closed, go to them, and they'll deliver it to us maybe. But great idea, and I shout out to the folks to put this motion on the table.
Thank you, Councillor Grant, and then Councillor Gardner.
That's fine, Mr. Acting Mayor. Councillor McIntosh took the words out of my mouth.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, I fully support it also, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'd like comments about what transit did to make changes so that this could happen. Has anybody around the table in administration could talk about that, what transit has done to move their buses to other areas or other stop signs to make sure people still can come downtown?
Madam CEO.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, we have Mr. Bill DeWitt with us at the meeting. I believe that we were awaiting council's direction tonight, and then transit will have to work on determination of routes that are affected. And then we'll also have to make sure that our public information coordinator assists with getting that information out via social media and on city's website to make sure that everyone's aware. There is no Sunday service, so Sunday is not affected, but Friday evenings and Saturdays, you know, there will be some impacts. So I'm not sure if Mr. DeWitt has anything further to add, but.
Okay, Mr. DeWitt, do you have anything to add?
Not particularly. As indicated in the report, we have set up some detours, and we'll still be picking up them. We'll still have our stops at Pitt and Second, but most of the routes will be detoured from the downtown core or from down Pitt Street to other routes to maintain the Montreal Road and the Riverdale routes as well.
Mr. DeWitt, I'd like you to thank the transit for being so flexible. In the past, this has happened, and they've been flexible and able to go with the punches. So much appreciated to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other comments or questions? So we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Next, we are looking for a motion that council receive the unfinished business listing for June 28th.
Councillor DePel, Councillor Grant. Comments, questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. On to communications.
Process to fill a vacant seat of council with a recommendation that council choose from one of the following three options. Appoint amongst the current members of council to fill the vacancy of the mayor's position. Require a by-election to be held to fill the vacancy in accordance with the Municipal Act 1996 and direct administration to set a date for a by-election, or fill the vacancy by appointing a person who has consented to accept the office if appointed.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking to council for direction. Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'd like to move item B, by-election, be our choice.
I have a seconder. Councillor Towndale. Questions? Discussion? Councillor Hollingsworth.
I'm probably not going to vote in favor of item B. A couple of reasons, Your Worship, your acting worship, I guess. A couple of reasons. Number one, we're talking about basically a tad more than 12 months. I think our clerk would probably agree, and feel free, Madam Clerk, to jump in if I'm wrong on this one. But have a municipal election demands a fair chunk of time, resources, people, power, and to kind of go into that. And even though it's only technically one member, I'm inclined to believe it's probably almost the same amount of time and energy as if it were a full kind of slate or full council. And so because it demands a fair amount of resources and it's only a small amount of time, I am reluctant to commit to that kind of idea. Now, I appreciate that to have an election, the people have spoken, and whoever gets elected is the mayor, and great. I totally understand why the rationale for it, but I don't want to spend the money. My fear is that it will suck up a fair amount of resources from admin to do exactly the same thing they're going to do in about 12 months. And quite frankly, I think most of us would admit is that the election period maybe officially starts off in, June, July, but in reality, elections probably start more like, kind of budget time thereabouts. And so we're really almost more like about 4 or 5 months away from the election period. It doesn't seem to make sense financially. I think there are some other alternatives in light of the fact that we're only looking at a small window of time. If Mayor Clement had resigned maybe 3 years ago, I'd say yes, we should have another election because it's almost a full term of council. But we're down to the kind of the last sort of leg of our race here, and I don't want to spend the money. And I think we can easily find someone who is qualified who will do a good job for the short term. So I'm not prepared to support a motion to have a by-election so close to what really would be a full election in about 12 to 14 months.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Bergeron.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yeah, look, to me, this is the way we go. Councillor Hollingsworth kind of touched on it, but I truly believe the people of Cornwall have the right to choose their mayor. I know I believe it to be a 15-month position. I don't necessarily like the timeline in the report. I think we could actually speed that up a little bit. But frankly, to me, it doesn't preclude the other options. If you are a councillor and you'd like to put your name forward, if you are a person from the community and you'd like to be appointed, then put your name forward. In terms of costs, personally, I think a mayor through a budget cycle, properly going through a budget process can save us more than $180,000. So I don't look at it as a cost. I look at it first as, is this the right thing to do? I believe that it is. And so this is really the way I think we should be proceeding. I'd like the timeline to be a little shorter than what's in the report, but I would make that as a separate motion that we pick a date. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. When we look at the community as a whole, and in the last number of days, whether it be at church or at the coffee, going around the coffee shop or whatever, shopping, this has been a topic of conversation for the last week or so. And I haven't been approached by one resident that said they want to see a by-election. What they're looking for is something that is cost effective. And it sure isn't cost effective to have a by-election for a very short period of time. So to me, I listen to the residents. They don't want it. I don't think it makes sense financially. I don't think it makes sense going through a summer period where we're short staffed in the clerk's area to start off with. It's a huge burden on them. So I can't support the motion at this time.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair, Mayor. I wasn't sure you had seen my hand. So I agree with Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Grant. And I just want to disagree with Councillor Bergeron, just this respect over a word. You mentioned that the right way to go was B. Well, there are 3 actual right ways to go. And it's up to us to choose which one suits our situation. So I think that an election, as has been said, would be expensive. But I also think that we are a rather, I'd say, very progressive council. We have achieved a great deal, and we're guided by a rock-solid strategic plan that has many initiatives, all of which we're addressing to the extent that we can. And frankly, I think what I would fear would happen from an election, not just the expense, but would be a change of direction in midstream. I think we have a really good set of programs going, and I would hate to see them disrupted, A, by an election, because an election kind of makes a timeout in what you're doing, no matter who's running. It does call for a timeout because you don't know what's going to be the result of it. And it could be that it would entail a change of direction. And I don't think that we're on a wrong course that needs correction here. We will never replace our lost mayor, Count Bernadette. But we can, I think, as a group, continue the work we've been doing under her leadership. We have a strategic plan to guide us, and we have the support of administration, which we've always had in leading us through that. And I think that the option of having an election would actually be counterproductive to our success and our work as a council. It would mean a loss of time, a loss of money, and possibly, most sadly, a loss of direction. So please, no election in midstream. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DePel.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Not that I was in favor of a by-election, but when I listen to what people are saying, I mean, yes, Councillor McDonald's right. All three options, A, B, and C are right, but pointing out to item A, none of us ran for mayor. None of us put our name on the ballot to be mayor. So to appoint one of ourselves, I think is wrong. B is the by-election, and C is the fill the vacancy with someone who is interested, but none of those people ran for mayor. So for a point of clarification, I'm asking Madam Clerk, is what if we appoint one of ourselves as mayor and vote amongst council, and then we have a vacant council seat, how do we feel that? How do we fill that?
Madam Clerk?
So the process would start all over to declare that seat vacant and to choose a manner in which that seat would be replaced.
Which in the past, we have gone to the last person in the council results that finished 11th place and appointed that person, correct?
That is what we have done since my tenure with the city.
Right. So why are we not looking at the same thing for the seat of mayor? Because the residents of Cornwall went out and voted, and whether we had 10, 12, 14 people who voted for mayor, the first person won, which was Mayor Bernadette Clement. But then why do we not look at the next people in line from what the people have chosen? Through
That
you.
that is entirely council's decision on how to fill the vacancy. We showed you the options of what could be done. I can say that historically, the mayor's position became vacant twice. Both times, a councillor or an alderman were appointed in their seat, and then their councillor seat was filled. And like you mentioned, historically, when it came to a councillor position, then the next one in line would be appointed. And if they were not accepting it, they would move on to the next one in line down the list.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So to finish, I think that we should look at not a by-election. So I will vote against it, but I think we should look at the election results and to see where we finish, because the people who came out and voted for Bernadette elected Bernadette, but then the people who came out and elected David Murphy voted David Murphy. So to me, none of the 10 of us have ran for mayor. And I think that we should reconsider what's before us, or fill the vacancy with appointing a person who will accept it. I think it should look at the election results, because I think that if we go back to the election results, it speaks volumes. And I think that we need to respect that on behalf of the voters.
Thank you, Councillor DePel. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much. I'm opposed to number 2 or B. I, for one, think we have the people around the table who could sit as mayor. And because of what Elaine McDonald said, that we've got all kinds of commitments and plans on the go, I think one of our own would be a person who I would like to see leading the council in the direction that Senator Clement set us off in. So I'm not in favor of a by-election for cost, and knowing that we have people around the table that could handle the mayor's job or position. I'm not in favor of number 2. I'm more in favor of number 1, which is appointing one of our members of council. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I will not vote in favor of this motion. I would prefer the first option, which would be appointing within council for multiple reasons. I think the cost is one of them. By the time we would get through an election, we would be 11 months away from the next election. And let's be serious, people can start nominating themselves as of January 2022. That would mean an election is not far away. So I think, as it was mentioned, Bernadette has united all of us. Yes, we are all very different, and we don't always vote in favor together. But I think like Councilor McDonald mentioned, we've been united around a strategic plan. And I would like to see that consistency from a member of our current council to stay at the leadership and push us through the next year of our term, the last year of our term. Also, want to echo the sentiment that Councillor Glenn mentioned, that he hasn't heard anybody hoping for an election. I just spent the last week with hundreds of volunteers at our emergency food hamper, and guess what? This was the topic of conversation everybody wanted to pick my brain about, and not once did I hear anyone state that they were wanting an election. And I think everyone was pretty much in favor of appointing from within. We're a year away from an election, if we really look at it, and so I think we can continue. We all have to pull our socks up. No one is going to replace Bernadette, and so with a interim mayor and the rest of us really supporting that individual for the next year, we're all going to have to do our part. I think we can continue her legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McIntosh, I believe I saw your hand up.
Correct, you saw. I get the sense too that there's no appetite out there for a by-election. It hasn't been brought up in any of the conversations I've had. Of course, at the time, the people didn't realize what the options were, but it's happened twice in the history of the city, and each time to replace a mayor, and each time they selected a member of council. When it comes to filling the vacant council seats, replacing a councillor, it's been done both ways. It's been done by going to the next person down the line, and also a couple of times they've appointed people rather than go to the 11th place finisher. So all options have been used on that when it comes to replacing a councillor. The cost doesn't really, I never really thought that we shouldn't have a by-election because of the cost. I'm just going back to there's no appetite. Even a well-planned, well-publicized municipal election, really, you have trouble breaking 40% turnout. Just speculating, not. I don't have anything to back this up, but I doubt very much if there'd be a very big turnout for an election late July, early August, when people are thinking about everything but politics and elections. And, so, I'll go with option A, and vote against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor McIntosh. Does anyone else care to speak? Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I seconded the motion because I do believe in by-elections. Last term, we had a similar debate. I ended up being the only person who supported a by-election. To me, it's the way to go. I understand the length of the term is short. It's timing. It's just the way it goes, unfortunately. But I know this is what they do at provincial and federal levels. I get the municipal levels different, and we have a smaller budget than those levels of government, and they function differently than us to some extent. But I really do think it is the best option, in my opinion. It gives the opportunity for people to have a say, because it's true. I agree with every comment. We can't, whoever steps into the mayor's seat can never truly replace Bernadette, and it will never be a replacement. It'll be someone who's succeeding her, but it's never going to be a true replacement. But I think the community should have a strong voice in that. I think, I understand what Councillor Dupel is saying, but the 2018 election was some time ago. And one thing by-elections allow is you have people who come forward and put their name forward who didn't previously, which can give a new course of voices and can provide a new voice around the table. And I think there's a benefit to that as well. It also gives the opportunity to discuss policy more readily in the public sphere. Now, I understand there's a cost to this, but to me, that's the cost of doing business. It's the cost of democracy. Elections aren't cheap. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes. To me, by-election is the best choice and is always the best choice. And anytime we have this debate, I will support a by-election. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Towndale. Before I go back to Councillor Bergeron to wrap up, does anyone else have anything else they wanted to add? Councillor Dupel.
Mr. Acting Mayor. So if we avoid the by-election, then we already have a bylaw in place that has an acting mayor. And if it's such a short term that we're looking at, why don't we just continue the rotation of the acting mayor? And not fill the seat of the mayor or the seat of a councillor.
Anybody would like to comment on that? Possibly the clerk? Madam CEO, I see you've unmuted.
Yeah, so the municipal act is very specific. So within 90 days of an election, the position doesn't have to be filled, but outside of that, it does. And these are the options that are in the report. So it's a requirement of the municipal act to fill the position.
Thank you. Answer your question, Councillor DePel. Go ahead.
So through you to the CAO, could we pass a bylaw that would say that we're going to do a rotating basis for the remainder of the term?
Madam CEO.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, no, I don't believe so, because the vacancy is declared. The vacancy will need to be named and filled. And then once that position is named and filled, we're going to have to name and fill the position for the councillor as well.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Thank you, Ms. CAO.
Thank you. So just before we go to Councillor Bergeron to wrap up, it's very important topic we're on, so I think I should give my 2 cents. As you can imagine, with the resignation of Mayor Clement, and then the news out that I was going to be the acting mayor, that at my job that's very much in the public, I have been having this conversation a lot. Probably more than any other subject that's ever come up in my 3 years here now. And I would say I've probably had 40 to 50 conversations, which is about 5 times more than I have on just about anything else. And there's only one person that brought up an election. It was a good argument. It was basically the argument that Councillor Bergeron and Councillor Tundell are making. But the 99% of the people I spoke to did not want an election, and for multiple reasons. Cost was one. The fact that it's only, by the time it's said and done, it's 12 months in a term, so it seems like a lot of time and effort spent for 12 months. And partly because a lot of people believe that it wouldn't be fair to ask a candidate to spend a couple of $1,000s to run, and then ask them to do that again next year in 12 months when the election's back up again. So it was a lot of fairness that was the part of the discussion in that regard. So as I said, I've had a lot of conversations. So because of those conversations, I will be voting against the motion as well. Councillor Bergeron, you don't want to wrap up?
I've already spoken. I just wanted to ask for a recorded vote. Thank you.
So, Madam Clerk, we're ready for the vote.
Yes. Let me just find my recording sheet. Okay, so recorded vote for option B to go to a by-election. Councillors Claude McIntosh.
Opposed to option B.
Éric Bergeron.
In favor.
Sid Gardner.
Opposed.
Dean Hollingsworth.
Opposed.
Caroline Hébert.
Opposed.
Councillors Maurice Dupel.
Opposed, Madam Clerk.
Glenn Grant.
Opposed.
Justin Towndale.
In favor.
Councillor Elaine McDonald.
Opposed.
And Acting Mayor Todd Bennett.
Opposed.
So the motion is defeated. Only 2 is in favor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have 2 other options. Councillor Gardner.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint amongst our members a councillor to fill the vacancy of Mayor Clement's chair. And part of my motion would be to ask Councillor Glenn Grant if he would be willing to accept it if he's voted in. I need a seconder for that, please.
Just before we get a seconder, Madam Clerk, is that motion in order?
No, you have to decide the manner first, and that motion needs to be carried before nominating anyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Option A.
So the motion is for option A, which is appoint amongst a member of council. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McIntosh. Discussion. Councillor Hollingsworth and Councillor Bergeron.
Just a quick question to the clerk. Option C says fill the vacancy by appointing a person who has consented to accept the office if appointed. Now, if I, like, the way it reads to me is what happens if I had a person in the community that I thought might really be a good member, and let's say Councillor Bergeron knows somebody that he thinks would be a really good member, and perhaps Councillor Hebert has somebody that she thinks might be a really good member. How do we get around that if we ended up going with option C?
So option C, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, would have to be voted on, and the motion would have to be carried. And then a nomination could be made by anyone on council for that council member. So that, or for the mayor's position. And so that can be anyone in the community. It could be the next one in line from the election. It could be somebody that you propose, but that's where politics happen, right? So you'd have to talk to yourselves among each other and sort of decide on which way you wanted to go. That would be more simple than just throwing, 10 names at a council meeting as a nominee.
Sorry. So the question then kind of logically, and it came up with talking to a couple of my colleagues about it. If I said, okay, I'm going to vote against option A, but then I don't know, I think Councillor Bennett might be a really good guy and we go with option C, could I not then technically throw his name or nominate his name, even though he's a current sitting councillor? Technically speaking, doesn't he still fill in, isn't he still applicable for option C? Could I not do that?
Yes, you could.
Okay, now that being said, Mr. Acting Mayor, I'm going to vote against option A because technically speaking, I could still nominate somebody from council under option C. Okay, but I also think Councillor DePel makes a valid point that maybe we should go to the previous mayor campaign and identify this case, I guess, former Councillor Murphy and say, okay, he's the next vote getter. So I see option C as kind of a nice, I guess, bridge between A and C, and that I could still have a sitting councillor that I think is really good, but I don't necessarily, I still potentially want to see people from all around wade into it. So I'm going to actually support or vote against option A because I think C ultimately is the best option for us. The other thing, Mr. Acting Mayor, if I might, I would like to actually make a motion to defer A and C for 2 weeks to allow at least myself and hopefully my colleagues to get some more feedback, simply because I think a number of people in the community really didn't understand what the options were. I mean, we got our agenda on Thursday night or Friday, and people have cornered us based on them thinking, well, you just have to have an election, or you just have to, potentially pick a member of council. And I don't think the community at large necessarily understood that option C was even available. So I'm going to make a motion to defer this until our next council meeting in order to allow us as councillors to get further feedback from the community as to what they would like, if I can get a seconder.
We have a seconder, Councillor DePel. Discussion on
Point of
the
order.
Yes.
The first motion, was it seconded?
Yes. Councillor Claude McIntosh.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in other words, we can't amend that motion if there's 3 options there from a point of order's perspective. We can defeat this one and then defer option C.
Well, on a point of order, Councillor Grant, I believe a motion.
I'm not
deferred is
talking,
always in
excuse
order.
me. I'm going through the clerk.
Madam Clerk?
So a motion to defer is in order here. So if option A was to be defeated, that is in order, and the report would come back at the next council meeting of August 12th. And then the only two options on the table would be options A or option C, since option B has been defeated.
Okay, so so the motion to defer would still allow A and C be brought back at a later meeting.
That is correct.
Could I still go with my point of order?
Councillor Grant?
So you're saying that the motion on the floor is option A?
That is correct.
And so we're deferring
the matter
to the motion.
So the deferral is for the vote on the matter on which the seat is filled. And because option B has been defeated already, the only two options left are options A and option C, if it comes back after the deferral.
Okay, just doesn't seem to fit. Oh. I'll accept what you're saying, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I have a problem, and I'm not sure if this is, I don't want to make it sound like a challenge to the chair, but in a sense, it might be, it's a question to the clerk, certainly, and I don't mean it to be a challenge. But it seems to me that if the person in C could also be a sitting councillor, which I believe is what you ruled a couple of questions ago, Madam Clerk, then there really aren't three distinct options here. I think A and C then would be the same option, that anybody, including a councillor, could be appointed. So I really think that if you thought that we could assume that the person in C could be a sitting councillor, I don't see that as being consistent with the presentation here of three distinct options. Because it seems to me option A would be subsumed into option C. And I think that the Municipal Act would have thought of these three options as being distinct.
So through you, Mr. Mayor,
yep.
You are correct. Option A does roll into option C. Municipal Act has actually option B and option C. This option A was added to our procedural bylaw to point out our history and what has been done in the past, I believe.
So if I'm just looking for clarification, so option A does roll into C, but option C does not roll into option A.
That is correct.
Thank you. Councillor DePel.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Madam Clerk has clarified that because option A is inclusive to council, option C is inclusive to everyone in our community. So thank you.
Correct. Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you. Yeah, they are distinct in the sense that they one does not include the other. So as far as I'm concerned, option C is the way to go given the vote of the last motion. But I believe we're debating a deferral right now. But I just want clarity, I think, which is what Councillor Grant was asking for. We are deferring the entire matter, or we are deferring option A. They're two
You are
different
deferring
things.
the entire matter.
So, thank you. I would prefer to not defer tonight. I would prefer to defeat option A and move forward with option C, because option C includes option A. I don't think that if we're looking at what is in front of us here, I would like to see anybody who is willing to put their name forward, to come forward for us to have a special council meeting in the month of July where there has been some public discussion about who we would appoint. But as far as I'm concerned, that should include people who did run for mayor if they are willing to put their names forward. So I will give some thought before voting on the deferral, because ultimately I'd like to defeat option A tonight, and I would like to see option C approved tonight so the process can begin and we can name a mayor, appoint a mayor, not an interim mayor, a mayor, as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, so
And
this,
a recorded vote, please.
this debate is on the deferral. So Councillor McIntosh, then Hebert.
Okay, I need some clarity on this. With option C, we're going to appoint a person who is consented to accept the office. So we're going to come back on July 12th with a person or a laundry list of people who would like to be mayor. And then we're going to spend the next 10 hours debating who that person's going to be by a process of elimination. Am I getting this right? Or maybe I don't.
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, that is correct.
That could be very interesting. Very interesting. Which is why I'd be against that one. I don't believe for a minute if everybody came in with a name that we can sit down on July 12th and actually come up with a majority of councillors supporting one name. I see a slippery slope on this one, so I'm sticking with A.
Thank you, Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I will not vote for the deferral. I think it's been said that we need to get going with our work, and we need a mayor, interim or not, to lead us. It was also mentioned that the members of our community haven't had time to think about it. Unfortunately, we're the elected officials. We're the ones deciding. We're elected to make hard choices, hard decisions. This is one of them. We are encouraged to speak to our constituents, and I think we all have had the opportunity to do that. I think it's all we've talked about since Tuesday. And at the end of the day, it's great to have input, but we are elected to make hard choices, and this is one of them. And I'm ready to make that choice this evening. So I will vote against the deferral.
Are there any more questions or comments on the deferral before I go back to Councillor Hollingsworth to wrap up? Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I am not going to support the deferral either, and I've got 3 reasons to suggest to you as why everybody should decide tonight. The first one is continuity, and the second one is consistency, and the third one is the axiom steady as she goes. I think we've got a very good thing going, and let's just maintain it. No flash, no dash. Let's just keep working.
Thank you. And Councillor Hollingsworth to wrap up on the motion to defer.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'll try and tie everything up so I don't have to talk ever again. One thing I want to point out, what's interesting is that I hear members of council historically talk about public feedback and how we need to be all consultative and make sure everybody has a voice and everybody has a chance. But funny how we kind of wear that hat depending on, I don't know what frame of mind we're in, just saying. Now, secondly, I've been through one of these before where we had to replace a mayor about 20 years ago. And what we did at the time was we operated it like a leadership convention because there were 5 councillors who wanted to be mayor. And so essentially what we did was everybody put their name out. We had a vote. The person who had the least amount of votes dropped out of the race. Then we voted again. Once again, person with least amount of votes dropped out of the race until a member got 6 votes, right? So that could be first ballot, second ballot, third ballot, fourth ballot. So in answer to Councillor McIntosh's reference about if we had a whole bunch of names, it will take all night. Well, that's happened before. I was part of it where we had more than just one or two. We had to weed through 5 names and we just dropped them off. And quite frankly, admittedly, it takes a little bit of time, but if we had 8 people, for example, we simply do it as, like I said, a leadership convention. Person with the least amount of votes is eliminated. Then we go to the next person, eliminated until we get 6 votes. And if that happens on the first ballot, great, terrific. Majority of council has picked this person, done. So I don't think it has to be A or nothing for expediency's sake. And I will tell you, having been through one where we had to replace a mayor, 5 candidates, it wasn't just 1 or 2. And that's, I mean, you work through it and you're done. So I suspect the motion to defer will be defeated. That is regrettable to me personally, but so be it. That being said, I think we can do C. I think it's a manageable way of, I think it's a manageable option. If it wasn't a manageable option, I don't think the municipal act would even have it there if they thought it was undoable. I mean, they're the ones that tell municipalities how to run their business. So I'm sure it's somewhat tried and true. So I'm going to probably get defeated on the deferral. I can tell you right now, I won't support A, and I'm hoping if nobody else will make it, I'll pitch C, but we'll just let it shake itself out. So on the motion of deferral, Mr. Acting Mayor, let's move on and get a vote and move on.
I believe a recorded vote was asked for.
That is correct,
Sure.
Mr. Acting Mayor.
Okay, well, we're ready to go.
So the vote this time is on the deferral of the entire matter. Councillors Claude McIntosh,
Opposed to deferring it.
Éric Bergeron,
In favor.
Sid Gardner,
Opposed.
Councillors Dean Hollingsworth,
In favor.
Caroline Hébert,
Opposed to the deferral.
Maurice Dupel,
Favor.
Councillors Glenn Grant,
Opposed?
Justin Towndale,
Yes.
Elaine McDonald,
Opposed?
and Mr. Acting Mayor.
Opposed.
So the motion is defeated.
Okay, so we're back to the main motion.
That is correct, and that is option A now.
Let's redo our speakers list. Councillor DePel, Councillor Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I will not support option A. I will look towards option C, which includes any of us that are recorded in option A. So I will vote against option A at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Bergeron.
Again, I'd ask for a recorded vote. I just want to be really clear. I will not be voting for a mayor tonight. If someone is putting forward a motion after this to put someone's name forward, I absolutely will be voting no, no matter what name is put forward. I think the community has a right to have a discussion about this, given the options that we are now voting on. So I will be voting against option A, because if you do want to put your name forward, you have the right to do that in option C. I would advise, or I would suggest, a special council meeting very specifically to elect a new mayor from this process. I do not think that is a difficult thing. I think our next council meeting is less time than if Bernadette had taken a vacation. We have an acting mayor process in place. And so option C, as far as I'm concerned, includes option A, is simple, and given the votes that we had today, would be the right thing that would be the thing I would pick. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Pretty much exactly what Councillor Bergeron said, but one thing I want to make crystal clear is that if A is endorsed, I will vote against every single nomination tonight, period. Everyone, regardless. I feel that strongly about it. And yes, I'd like a recorded vote as well.
Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I support that, and one of the reasons I support it is the people are looking to this council to lead. And also administration needs to have some consistency and some in that office. So I think it's imperative. We were selected by the community to lead this, the community. So let us make that decision tonight and move forward. So I support option A.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, I support option A. I brought it forward to begin with for two reasons that Councillor McDonald brought forward, and that's consistency and continuity. And that's what our outgoing mayors talked about, what this council did. I need to have someone, or I feel someone in the chair of the mayor from council who will continue the work that Bernadette started and who will continue all the projects that we started with Senator Clement. So yeah, option A is to me is the right thing to go. And I agree with Carolyn Ebert. We were elected to make decisions, not to sit on the fence, not to bring all kinds of excuses forward. We were elected to make decisions, hard decisions, and that's what I want to do tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor McDonald.
Hey, we're going to go with option A, but does option A say we do it tonight or July 12th? Or does that have to be amended, put in a motion?
It would, yeah. Madam Clerk, I believe it would depend on a motion.
So the motion right now is to decide to go to fill the position with a current sitting member of council. That is the only motion being considered at this time.
Okay, so then that would have to, another motion have to follow saying we'll do it tonight or we'll wait till July 12th, right? Or a special council meeting, correct?
Yes and no. You could make that decision this evening. If not, then as administration, we would bring it up. We would bring it back to the August 12th meeting.
Okay, so if
July 12th.
we're down to option A, and option A says that we're going to decide among members of a member of council is going to be filling the spot. Okay, we'll go from there.
Okay, Madam CEO, just come on screen. Did you have something you'd like to add?
Council could also decide to have a special council meeting. I know that Councillor Bergeron had mentioned that. So if council would like to have a special council meeting just to deal with this one matter, that is okay. Administration would probably look to council this evening for direction on that with respect to a date.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh, you're good?
That's not, having a special council meeting is not going to change the fact that if A passes, that we're going to be, it's a member of this council is going to be the next mayor. That's not going to change.
Correct.
It just gives more time for, I don't know what, I guess to get, gather your support, I guess, if you want the job, but by now you must, anybody around the council table who's been thinking about, they'd like to take them, move into the mayor's office. I'm sure you've given it some thought and talked to maybe your friends and family and everybody else about it. So anyway, I'll support option A. That's the motion.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I have a question, and that is, if we were to go with option A, exactly what process do we follow? Somebody tried to nominate somebody a while ago, and that was not the process. So what is the process? Would somebody around the table nominate themselves or volunteer themselves, and then we would vote on it? Or perhaps, Madam Clerk, you could explain that to me.
Madam Clerk.
So there are two ways to do it. One is for someone to nominate a sitting member of council, get a seconder, and the chair would then ask if there's anybody else or other nominations. The other way is to endorse a motion that would ask for any interested party to stand up to be nominated, and then the votes would be taken.
Okay, so then a follow-up question would be, let's say two people just stood up and said that they would like to run for mayor amongst us around the table. And let's say it were tied. Would those two people be disqualified from option C if then we went to option C? Like if somebody were to run under option A, would they be disqualified from running under option C later?
So you would have to go back to reconsideration. So if you adopted option A, two names are put forward, the motion is defeated for want of majority, then you have to reconsider the matter to open up option C. You need a 2/3 majority vote for that.
Okay, and then if we did use the 2/3 majority and actually passed option C, would the people who previously ran under option A, would they still be able to run under option C?
I would have to do some research. I have to be honest. I haven't heard of this scenario before, but we would definitely get an opinion on it to make sure that we're conducting this properly.
Right. Not too many of us have been here before. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, we're going to go back around for a second round. So Councillor McIntosh.
Well, if we approve option A, we now have a race. I don't know how somebody who stood up and like we'd be deciding tonight or July 12th or a special council meeting, which one of us would be getting the job. So I don't know how that can play into, well, if we go to option C after that, because we'll be moving on to the vote. Just a matter of when we're going to take the vote once we deal with option A.
I think if we were to nominate two people, if A passes and we were to nominate two people, I would strongly suggest that we defer it to another meeting to give the 2 or 3 individuals the opportunity to talk to each of us, or maybe decide that they don't really actually want to do it. But I think if we're going to have a race, then trying to decide it tonight would be unfair to all. So I would suggest that we would defer at that point, but that's of course the decision of
I don't have a
council.
problem with that. I'm just saying we pass option A because we're out of options. We pass option A if we pass it. If somebody wants to say I want to run for the job, I have no trouble saying fine. Maybe you two guys come back on the 12th or a special council meeting and we'll have the vote then. But at least we'd have to be moving on.
Fair enough. Councillor Grant and then Councillor DePel.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Would it be possible to amend one of these motions? Basically, if it's A, to appoint amongst the current members of council to fill the vacancy of the mayor's position at the next scheduled council meeting.
Madam Clerk, would that be in order?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Grant, any follow-up?
Well, I'll make that amendment.
So the original mover was, I believe, Councillor Gardner. Madam Clerk, the mover and the seconder of the motion.
It was Councillors Gardner and McIntosh.
Are both of you in favor of the amendment?
So, Mr. Acting Mayor, since it is a proper amendment, perhaps we can get a seconder and take a vote on the amendment.
Thank you.
And the amendment is?
The amendment is that if option A is, I'd have to think exactly how it is, but it's to add the wording on July 12th. If option A is passed, if the main motion is passed afterwards.
Okay.
So it's to add the wording and that a decision be made on July 12th.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Towndale. Discussion of the amendment. Councillor Bergeron, Councillor DePel.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I would, I still won't be voting in favor of the motion, but I would have preferred had it said special council meeting. I actually think this is a really big deal. And if we're naming a mayor, a special council meeting is the way to do it. We have a lot of administrative duties during council meetings. As the person who will most likely be chairing that meeting, I really think a special council meeting is the way to go. So I'm not in favor of the motion in general because I select option C, but I would prefer to see it as a special council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor DePel, then Councillor Grant.
Acting Mayor, I'll vote against it as well because I think that option C could also add at the July 12th meeting where we could have nominations, which would include any of us that sit amongst council currently, or anybody from the general public or anybody from the last election. So I see option C as being inclusive, and I want to think that our community.
Order, Madam, or Mr. Acting Chair, it's not, he's not talking to the motion.
So yeah, so the motion is just to add the date at the end.
Right.
Right, so I'll vote against option A.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Grant?
Just for clarification, since what Councillor Bergeron was talking about, if we say the next scheduled council meeting, as my wording originally went, the next scheduled council meeting could be a special meeting. So I'm trying to be accommodating here, and I think that would accommodate what Councillor Bergeron was talking about.
Fair enough. Is that okay with you, Madam Clerk?
No, a scheduled meeting to me means a regularly scheduled meeting. A special meeting, there's a date set for that meeting. If there was a friendly amendment to change the date from July 12th to a special council meeting, that would be in order.
Councillor Grant?
I'm trying to find proper wording that would accommodate everybody. It's so your suggestion is, Madam Clerk, to put it at the next council meeting?
So your motion was to put to make the appointment at the next council meeting, which is a regular scheduled meeting. You could change the wording to say that the decision be made at the at a special council meeting.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So our seconder was Councillor Towndale.
You're good with that?
So that would be a friendly amendment, and I just switch out the date July 12th to the special council meeting.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay. Sorry, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Could you read, please, again, the motion as amended however many times?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Clerk.
So the amendment you want me to read, Councillor?
No, the whole motion with the amendment, with the friendly amendment, or?
Okay, so the debate is on the amendment, but if it was passed, this is what the main motion would now read. To appoint amongst the current members of council to fill the vacancy of the mayor's position at a special council meeting.
Thank you.
But it is just the amendment we're voting on now.
That is correct, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor DePel and I believe Hollingsworth. No, okay, Councillor DePel.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So point of clarification, we're still just going to appoint a member of council.
Right now, we're just talking about adding the date to the motion. Not the date, but the special council meeting to the motion. So that's all we're doing. We're not voting on option A right now. Just adding special council meeting at the end. That's all this is.
Right. So clarification is that we would do it at a special council meeting.
Right.
Regardless of the option A or C.
No.
It's
Madam Clerk is shaking her head.
Right.
No. So the amendment is specific to option A. So the amendment is to add the wording at a special council meeting for option A only.
Point of clarification, Mr. Acting Mayor, then we're now deciding tonight at a special council meeting, we're going to appoint one of the 10 of us as mayor.
I suppose if this motion was to pass, yes.
Correct. I'll vote against it.
Okay. So vote on the amendment of adding a date, the special council meeting to the end of the motion.
Recorded vote, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Of course, Madam Clerk.
Madam Clerk, can you please read the amendment before we vote one last time? Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to read, we are voting on the special council meeting.
You're right.
And if this amendment passes, then the entire motion, main motion changes. So I'm going to read the main motion with the amendment and then zero in on the amendment separately. So the main motion would be to appoint amongst the current members of council to fill the vacancy of the mayor's position at a special council meeting. And this vote we're taking now is simply to add the wording at a special council meeting. This is the only thing you're voting on at the moment. If it passes, then we go back to the main motion.
Is everyone clear?
Just one point of clarification. If this passes and then the main motion passes, discussion ends, then we wait till the special council meeting for nominees and for voting officially.
That is correct through you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent.
Okay. Recorded vote, Madam Clerk.
Councillors Claude McIntosh,
Favor.
Éric Bergeron,
In favor of the amendment.
Sid Gardner,
In favor.
Dean Hollingsworth,
Opposed.
Councillors Karine Hébert,
In favor?
Maurice Dupel,
Opposed.
Councillors Glenn Grant,
In favor?
Justin Towndale,
Yes.
Councillor Elaine McDonald,
In favor?
and Acting Mayor.
In favor.
So that is 8 in favor, so the motion passes.
So we're back to the,
So now we are back to the main motion as amended. So that motion now is that council appoint amongst the current members of council to fill the vacancy of the mayor's position at a special council meeting.
thank you. Discussion. Really? Councillor Hollingsworth.
I just want to record a vote, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bergeron.
Yeah, so with this amendment, which I'm in favor of a special council meeting, I'm just not in favor of option A. So I'll be voting against it despite voting for the amendment. It's a little bit of administrative voting there, but I still think option C with a special council meeting is the correct path for the people of Cornwall. Thank you.
Okay, has everyone spoken? I just want, oh, sorry, Councillor McDonald.
So just a clarification then, if this fails, then if we go to C, it's still, it'd be a wide open field for candidates, but it would still be the council members who do the voting.
Correct.
Okay. And anybody could run, of course.
Correct.
And between now and then, would we know who is running, or would people have to wait till that special council meeting and announce then that they're running? Or would one of us nominate somebody? I think that's the way it would work, because we'd be the only ones at the table.
Madam Clerk.
So the nominations would be made now at the special council meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So before we get to the vote, I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in because I think it's probably only right that I do that. I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, and the reasons are this. In my opinion, to put somebody outside of this group in the mayor's chair at this point would be unfair to that person, in my opinion. You're asking somebody to come in who may have their own ideas or agenda that they want to establish as a mayor, and that's fair. If you're going to come into the chair, you should want to push your agenda forward. There's 12 months left, so the chances of that person actually being able to be effective is probably pretty slim. um, the idea that we would bring somebody in and put them in an unfair advantage, and especially if this is a person that wants to run again in a year from now, they're going to be running on a record that isn't theirs because they weren't able to establish their own agenda, or they would have a very difficult time establishing their agenda. And if we try to change the course we're on now, it's pretty much just going to make the next 12 months almost ineffective, in my opinion. So that's the way I feel, and that's why I'll support option A as that's now going to be voted on. And this was, I believe, asked to be a recorded vote. So if there's no one else, Madam Clerk, please proceed with the vote.
Sure. So this is for the main motion, option A as amended. Councillors Claude McIntosh,
Favor.
Éric Bergeron,
Opposed.
Councillors Sid Gardner,
Favor.
Dean Hollingsworth,
Opposed.
Councillors Caroline Hébert,
In favor?
Maurice Dupel,
Opposed, Madam Clerk.
Councillors Glenn Grant,
In favor?
Justin Towndale,
Yes.
Councillor Elaine McDonald,
In favor?
and Acting Mayor Todd Bennett.
In favor.
So 7 have voted in favor, Mr. Mayor, so the motion is carried.
Thank you.
Now, before we move on to the next item on the agenda, can we talk about selecting a date for the special council meeting?
Sure. Any ideas for that meeting? Do we want to do it like next Monday? Is that enough time for everyone? Or did you want to push it back past the next regular scheduled meeting?
Next Monday would be what date?
So
Just looking.
I was just checking myself. It would believe
Fifth.
the 5th. Yes, it would be the 5th.
I'm sorry, it would be,
It would be the 5th,
July 5th.
July 5th. So, Councillor Grant, Bergeron, and Dupel.
Was there a motion yet?
No, for a date? No, we're looking for one.
Well, I'll move July 5th as the special council meeting.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor McIntosh. Any discussion on the date? Councillor Dupel?
I believe there's an audit committee meeting that day.
Madam CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. There is an audit committee meeting that day. We could have this meeting at 5 o'clock. The audit committee meeting is scheduled for 7 o'clock.
Does that work for everyone?
Sorry. The audit committee meeting's at 5 o'clock, so it would be 5 to 7. So the council meeting could occur at 7 o'clock.
Okay. Does that work for everyone?
Mr. Acting Mayor, thank you, Madam CEO. I didn't realize how long it would go. It's my first audit committee meeting, so I just knew it was on that date and it was at 5.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any other discussion on the date? Councillor Bergeron?
I think it's too soon. I would not vote to support that date. I'd like a minimum of about 2 weeks where anyone interested in putting their names forward can have a discussion with the community. I think given this is perhaps what I would call a long weekend, I'd like to see it at least another week after that. So I would do it past the July 12th meeting. I'd do it on the 14th personally, or at a minimum late next week, not Monday. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
I kind of agree with Councillor Bergeron. There might be a member here who would potentially have to talk to an employer. If somebody gets nominated, they may need a leave of absence. We'll have to try to figure out how that's going to work. And I don't know if 5 or 6 days, particularly in light of the fact of a national holiday falling in the middle, somewhere in there, I would even prefer to see us go to maybe the Thursday of that week instead of the Monday, simply because it gives, if anyone's interested in running, and they may not have thought about it until tonight. So I would think that it might take a little bit more time. So I would prefer to see maybe a Thursday or something like that later in the week to try to give everybody fair time to kind of try to get their ducks in a row. So I prefer to go a little later, but that's just my preference.
Thank you. Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I agree with my colleagues. They bring up some good points about essentially a long weekend this weekend. We've decided the method of how we're going to pursue this. Obviously, we want to do this sooner rather than later. We don't want to drag this out too long, but at the same time, I think, say next Thursday, it's a couple days than originally planned, but I don't think it extends it too far where it's damaging. So I think I would be in favor of that as well.
Okay. Actually, I guess, do we have any other comments on the original motion, which is to have it on the 5th? Because if we defeat that, then we can come up with another date. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. I think that the 8th makes a lot of sense to a couple of extra days, given that we have a holiday weekend coming up.
Okay.
So I guess I would vote against the 5th, and then hopefully somebody has already suggested the 8th or.
Okay. Councillor Grant?
Rather than having one motion after the other, I can amend my motion to do the 8th, and I was just trying to find a date, so.
That's fair enough. Is the seconder okay with that?
No problem at all.
Perfect. Now, just to clarify, we have staff available for that night. Madam CAO, does Thursday night of the 8th, is that okay? Does that work out for everyone?
I think that it's fine.
Okay. Councillor McIntosh?
Oh, I was just wondering about the time. Could we not do it at 5? Save staff from hanging around for an extra 2 or 3 hours?
I'm okay with that. Everyone else okay with 5 o'clock? Okay, good. Any other comments on the 8th?
Good.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Our next item on the agenda is the addition of our report, Municipal Grants Program Extension for 2021. And the recommendation reads as follows: that council reopen the application period for the Municipal Grants Program 1, financial and in-kind assistance for the period of July 1st, 2021 through July 10th, 2021, in order for the Municipal Grants Review Committee to receive and consider submitted applications for the year 2021.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do I have a mover of that motion? Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Gardner. Discussion?
Just basically, I'm on that committee, and I think this is a good thing that because of COVID, some people may not have been able to come to our committee to ask for a grant. So yeah, I'm in favor of that.
Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'm opposed to changing it. Everybody had fair chance to make applications. And I know people use COVID, kind of seems to be, we're starting to use that as our excuse for everything. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I hate to be like someone who dismisses the impact of COVID, but we had a policy in place. Let me ask Ms. Bailey a quick question. We advertised at great length, did we not, Ms. Bailey, to anybody and everybody who could have potentially been looking for grants, correct?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, we did advertise both in the city page and the standard freeholder and on through social media for the first application period, our application period.
Now, let me ask you one more question. We did in fact reach out to specific groups that, not to name any one in particular, but some groups who had historically applied who didn't apply. We actually did kind of reach out to them to say, oh, by the way, just to let you know, we're accepting applications. We really think that you should. So we made an effort to get in touch, particularly with groups who had been kind of in the loop before and then for whatever reason didn't. We actually contacted them to double check to make sure they were aware, correct?
Actually, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, we didn't do that. It was decided by the committee that for equity, that we wouldn't reach out to specific individual organizations, and that the advertisement should be the outreach that we did.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. You just used my favorite word, that being equity. Equity, everybody treated the same. Every single person in the city of Cornwall had opportunity to apply for grants, every one of them. So and the reason why we put this policy in place was to mitigate, the politics and the lobbying and well, these guys are really good, so we should give them some money, even though they didn't meet the criteria. So I really feel bad for certain groups, I do. But we have a budget process in order. We need to find money. We've put money aside at budget time based on applications from John Q. Public. And we've gone at great length to say, by the way, this is how we're doing it. So 2 years ago, we said, this is how we're doing it. We even cut some groups some slack along the way because it was the first year. And then we changed some dates because of COVID in terms of when groups could put in, their final reports and stuff. So we've done a lot of work to try to accommodate, and everybody has the same circumstance. Everybody's in the same boat. In fact, we even had some groups that applied for money, got the money, and then said, gee, because of COVID, we don't think we can keep our event going. So we're going to just not take the money or the services. Thank you very much, maybe next year. So I'm not prepared to support this particular motion. We are contrary to our own policy. And when we start that, all of the work that the subcommittee did and all of the work that the grants committee have done is all for naught if we change gears right now, in my humble estimation. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Councilor Gardner?
yeah, I want to speak to that because COVID is a reality. It's not a maybe thing. Policies are put in place to guide us and not to put us in a position where we dictate to people what can be done and what cannot be done. Miss Tracy, Tracy, would you answer this question? Would any of the people who different, like 121 Food Fest, Rib Fest, are any of those people come forward now and saying, hey, with the opening that's been created by the province, we would like to come back to you and ask if you can take a look at us again?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, we had 3 events cancel that informed us that they wouldn't proceed in 2021. We haven't heard back to say with them indicating that they would like to now that there is a reopening. If that was the case, then those dollars are already approved and available to them. They just communicated that they wouldn't be going forward, but they're still committed in that capacity and not included in the remaining budget that is under the financial implications. So the 82,900 does not include, it has not been increased by the cancellations that we've seen through those 3 organizations.
$200,000 to spend, right? So with the changes and COVID being real and the changes that are coming that will allow more people to join these groups and come in for Rib Fest and different festivities, then I will continue to give people a chance to come back and ask for money, because the reason they didn't do their festivities was because of COVID, nothing else. And so COVID changed a lot of things, and we need to adapt to that. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Gardner. Councilor McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. You know, they say that change is the only constant. And I want to say that for 15 months, we have had constant change as our constant. We've flipped bylaws. We've initiated programs that stimulate spending for businesses. We've made up loan policies. We've handed them out. And we haven't just done that and then held it. We've continued to change. So we have been absolutely flexible for 15 months. And I don't see why, when it comes to this group, which is primarily composed of volunteers in the community, why for them we should say, no, the rule is the rule is the rule. Look, policies are made to support the community and all its endeavors. And I think that to be truly supportive of this largely volunteer sector, we have to maintain our flexibility. So please, let's extend the deadline for applications. One thing that COVID brought all of us was terrible uncertainty. And these people, these groups are people who had to predict where they'd be in 6 months and what they'd be able to do publicly. They didn't even know what the rules of socializing and event organizing were going to allow. So now that we're seeing a little bit more clarity, we're seeing ourselves opening up. So people are seeing possibilities that they couldn't imagine even 2 or 3 months ago, especially not even 2 months ago when we were in the height of the third wave. So I think we have to meet the changing times with obviously an embrace and a change in our policy. So let's please grant the extension.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald, Councillor Grant, and then Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. All we're changing here is the timelines, not the criteria, correct?
Through you, Acting Mayor. Yes, that would be it would go through the same process. So we'd open up the intake for an intake 2, and it would run July 1st to July 10th, I believe the report says. And then the Municipal Grants Review Committee would meet on that application and approve or deny the application based on the same criteria set forth in the application period for 2021.
Yeah, so I move this motion. I support it because I think it helps our community and events. So let's vote on it.
Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. We've spoke a lot about how hard hit our business community has been throughout this pandemic. We don't spend a lot of time talking about how hard hit our nonprofit and service sector has been suffering. And I think this is just one small thing we can do, reopen up applications for a small period of time. So many nonprofits have not been able to fundraise the way they have in the past. And at the same time, their need for their services has increased. The vulnerable population is growing. The level of people living below the poverty line within our community is growing. The level of mental illness is growing. Mind you, these service agencies that we depend on that aren't always publicly funded are making less and less and less money. So I think we can do one little thing. We've done a lot for the business community, and I support that. Do one little thing for our nonprofit community and reopen applications. I just want to make sure that if we are reopening now for 2021, are we intending to reopen for 2022 in October like we usually do?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yes, we would open October 1st to the last day in October for intake of applications for 2022.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm just going to add my 2 cents here. I think that Councillor Hollingsworth is 100% correct in his assessment in that this grants committee was created to stop special groups from coming to council after budget throughout the year whenever the need kind of arose or struck them. And I think it's been successful in doing that. We've created criteria that is fairly rigid and that you need to show us in great detail why you need the money and what you're going to do with the money. And you need to tell us after the year is done, how you spent your money. And I think it's a program that works very, very well. And so for the grants committee to open up creates problems for me. And I think the only way around that is that it's a council decision to take the money that's left over and then ask the committee to disperse it. Because if it was just to come out, if it was just a willy-nilly one group, I would be so against this. It's not funny, but there are opportunities here for many groups that decided not to proceed to come forward. And then there is $82,000 still left unspent. So this is not an easy decision for me because I sit on that committee and I chair that committee. And so if council's wish is to reopen this and have this committee oversee the dispersion of those funds, then it needs to be for more than just one group. It needs to be open to anybody. Okay. But there needs to be an understanding in the community that this is, as much as Councillor Hollingsworth made the point that, you know, COVID has changed a lot of things, and it's become the great excuse as well. And that may be fair and it may not be fair, but it's a point worth listening to. But the fact is, it has to be very clear in the community that this isn't going to be every summer that we're going to say, hey, we have 50,000 left, let's reopen it. As much as I hate to say COVID is an excuse, it's an excuse. And some businesses have thrived through this pandemic because of the nature of their business. And some have suffered, and we've done what we can to change bylaws around, to allow businesses to open up onto the streets and all those wonderful things. And I'll tell you, they're saying COVID should be well under control by September. So as long as I'm sitting here in another season, I will never vote to open up the application process again in the summer of 2022 for any reason. COVID, unfortunately, is the issue. And if we're just doing this for one group, then no. But if we're going to make it open to others, then it has to be fair and equitable for all. So I'm not a big fan of it for every reason Councillor Hollingsworth put forward, but unfortunately it's a COVID year, and I think an exception has to be made, and needs to be a pretty clear direction from council to this committee to oversee what council is directing it to do at this point. Those are my 2 cents. Any other comments before we go to the vote? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, sorry, I've lost my way in the agenda here.
So we're going to go back to the consent item 1 that was moved for discussion.
Thank you.
CPEG, with the following recommendations: to approve the following items for 2751457 Ontario Inc. at 36th Street East, for 2740648 Ontario Inc. at 113 2nd Street East, for Sean Smith and Sarah Irwin at 134 Montreal Road, and for 458422 Ontario Limited at Tollgate Road West.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Councillor Towndale, seconder. Councillor McDonald. Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I pulled this from consent because I had a few questions. One of them is in regards to the property on Tollgate Road West. It doesn't identify the parcel lot number or any sort of identifying feature. I'm just curious as to where that is exactly, please.
Who could take that? Mr. Bolo.
Sure. That would be a property that is formerly belonged to the school board that is adjacent to the water tower.
You're okay with that?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was waiting for yourself, Mr. Acting.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yes, thank you. No, that's great. I had a feeling. And through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, one more question.
Sure.
Normally when we get items to pack, there's a number of accompanying documents, just history of the property in terms of grants that have been issued and what the grants are for, because we have several different pillars or silos for those for the pots of cash. Is it possible to see those at some point?
Yeah, the programs that are assigned are in the agenda on page, well, in the agenda, it speaks to which programs were assigned. So if you go to the consent reports agenda page, it speaks to which programs. So for example, the Navy Club or the former Navy Club was for signs. And then if we look at the former chamber building, it is regarding program 1, which is the general rehab and redevelopment grant together with a sign and the application fees. And then we move on to the Le Village properties for building restoration. And finally, the last one is the site you were asking about, which is the former school board property, and that is regarding environmental site assessment grant.
Thank you for that. I guess I'm just used to seeing it on a spreadsheet, but no, that's fine. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? So we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Madam Clerk, next up.
I have no new business motions, Mr. Acting Mayor. So moving on to the bylaws.
Okay.
That bylaws 2021-74 to 77 inclusive listed on the agenda are being presented to council for adoption.
Mover, Councillor DePel, seconded by Councillor McDonald. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
So, Mr. Acting Mayor, this is where you would ask for reports from standing advisory, special and ad hoc committees of council.
I will not repeat what you just said. So does anyone have a report to give from their committees? Not a one. Okay. Moving on to notices of motion.
We have none, Mr. Acting Mayor, so we would move on to the confirming bylaw 78.
Mover, Councillor DePel, Councillor Grant. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we're coming up on our adjournment. Let me just say this has been a pleasure. I would suggest that any other acting mayor doesn't get a item on their agenda about how to elect a new mayor. It's been a great discussion. I really appreciate it. As always, everyone was very respectful. There was clearly some differences of opinion, but I think that's what makes this group so good. And I thank you all. Our next meeting will be the special council meeting on July 8th. I look forward to seeing you all then. A motion to adjourn. Councillor Towndale, Councillor Hollingsworth, all in favor. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.